Hey everybody, hey Raimu, hey Mobtree. Happy Wednesday. At a stream uptime of about an hour and 20 minutes. fnkymnky will be joining us, which let me make sure. Yeah, fnkymnky will be joining us. What should I say? We'll be teaching Adam some UI and UX concepts in the context of Skeleseller. Yeah, I'm really excited about this. I think it's gonna be great. I hope you're both doing well. I have some news to share that I mentioned. Number one, Ski Dog has joined the team. So Ski had offered to help set up the Steam page, and he also suggested that I set it up sooner than I'd been planning on setting it up. And I took him up on the offer, and he said, "Oh, is there anything else you want me to do?" And I'm like, "I mean, there's other stuff to do." And so, yeah, he'll be helping out with a lot of this. And we've already had done some stuff. So the next thing that we did, we started on the Steam page, and I don't think I can show you this right now. It's not public yet, and all of the admin UIs might have private information, so I'm not going to pull that up or anything. But September 27th is when I'll launch the next checkpoint. I had been debating on either that Friday or the one before it. I think that Friday is good. Let's write that in here. The next build should be uploaded on September 27th. Yeah, there. Okay, next, I think I mentioned this, but I wanted to make a vlog about development, and I was going to do that yesterday, but yesterday was instead, it was just taken up by everything else that was happening. So I think I want to wait until maybe we have the Steam page and then start the vlog and be like, hey, if this interests you, you can go wishlist it. Hey, Darkstorm. Hey, 3D Extended. There is now a website. It is a very, very cool looking website. Look at this. I mean, if that doesn't tell you everything you need to know about the game, I don't know what will. So yeah, we have the domain. We do not have any content on there. I just put this on there so that there'd be something, but we need to flesh this out, of course. Is that the semi-exciting news? The semi-exciting news was the first thing, I think, and also that we got a website. So yeah, Ski joining the team. But I think this final part is why it feels exciting to me, is that it feels real now. Like getting a Steam page, getting a website. We actually have a game we're prepping for on a checkpoint, which now has a concrete date. And then there's some other little piece of news that most people probably already know, but I uploaded the Melmsy interview to YouTube. So that is now there. Where are we at? Yep, there. And I put the mentoring video on my mentoring channel. And that was the mock interview if anyone didn't get to see that. I don't know how many people are going to benefit from this content still. I'm still going to produce it. I'm not putting a lot of effort into it, as you can tell. There's no custom thumbnails or anything other than that one. But I am trying to put more effort into the main channel stuff. So like I spent a lot of time on that thumbnail. It's not necessarily the best, but still. Wi-Fi stable on that part. Okay, good. Yeah. Yeah, and as I mentioned, the fnkymnky session will be starting in about an hour and 20 minutes. So I guess there's a lot of time for the train to throw you into a Wi-Fi black hole. Yeah, so that's everything I had to share. I think we'll just get to work. There is one thing I want to do here, which is make a SSCOM, which is https skeleseller.com. There. Now I can just type into, well, really anywhere. I could just type here, I guess, and it would type out the URL. Don't you dare wish that upon me. Well, the nice thing is you'll have the VOD no matter what. I don't think we're going to be reading chat, so I don't think the VOD is going to be too different from the live experience. In fact, I don't think I told fnkymnky about that. Maybe I should write that down. Notes during the session. So things to do right when we start. Make sure the layout is good of the stream. Make sure the audio is good. And then mention that he should probably turn off my stream and probably not look at chat since it'll be distracting. Okay, so this one's done. We can close out of, I already did. We got a zombie bite graphic, which let me pull this up. It is scary. It's the zombie using the bite attack, so it makes sense. But yeah, I gotta try adding that to the game. Actually, I should save this. Chomp. What a great name. Wait, what was... Nah, it doesn't matter. Okay, so this... I guess I'll keep the updates here. Well, yeah. Updates from today. This we'll get to afterward. I want to finish coding the archer. We need to make sure not to break anything in the next hour. Although if we do, we can just revert to an earlier commit. So I don't know where I left off. I did some extra work on this. And I think I coded... Oh, yeah, I remember where I left off. Okay, I coded wild shot, or at least most of it. But the problem is I do not know what we're doing for balance with this. Yeah. Where's the design document? Oh, also, where's YouTube chat? Let me get that. There we go. Okay, there. All right, so I wrote it as upon missing, increase haste. I like this idea, but the problem is that if you miss, you increase haste. And then if you miss again, you increase it even more. And then you get to the point where now you can shoot more times in Y seconds than you should be able to. And you can just kind of permanently keep this buff. So there are a few ways we could change this. We could say, like, increase haste by Y seconds. If you already have this benefit, then we just extend it instead of stacking it. Hey, Unknown. Yeah, well, I disagree with you there. I think a sorcerer should have a staff. So maybe next year, come back, and if you got better ideas, maybe I can implement them. Hope you're doing well. So problem, wild shot increases haste on miss, which can lead to, which does lead to faster attacks, which leads to faster attacks, which can lead to the haste buff stacking sort of ridiculously. So option number one would be, instead of stacking the buffs, extend the existing one. And I think I'm leaning toward that. Option number two is don't provide haste at all. Do something else. Option number three, actually, now that I think about it, is add stacks to steady shooting and make it so that getting hit reduces those stacks by some amount. I'm not sure if I like that. Full staff, like an intern. An intern mage. An apprentice, if you will. Hey, Lily. I think I want to go with this one. Instead of stacking the buffs, extend the existing one. So the way it was working was something, I'm just going to make up some numbers, like plus 15% haste for 5 seconds. So now the way it'll work, and then in the old world, you would get plus 30% haste for 5 seconds. And in the new world, you would get plus 15% haste for 10 seconds. Which I guess kind of still maybe gives you the same general problem, which is you might end up keeping full uptime on this. In fact, how do we want to frame that? It could just be a larger haste increase. Yeah, I think that's okay. Yeah. Hey, Phil. Businesses. Well, who knows? Maybe businesses.com is actually worth something. Is there anything else, though, that I'd want to do here? I don't think so. If it's not for option one, I think we do option number two, add something like power to this, but I think haste makes more sense. And I like that idea. Alternatively, the other thing we could do here, option number four, is just lower the duration of the haste buff such that this isn't really a problem anymore. Immediately fire again. Hey, Ramy. Take adarnlearns.com. That's a good domain. Yeah. I was actually thinking of changing my name to Adarn. Wheezed is pronounced biz. No question asked. Got it. Give it a hawk attack. I like that sort of idea. It reminds me of Final Fantasy 11 had the Dragoon, and the Dragoon always had like a wyvern pet, or should have always had. It was actually on a 2-hour cooldown, which was ridiculous. But yeah, I think an archer and a hawk or something could be kind of cool, but it's not how he designed the class, so yeah. So the problem with lowering the duration is I don't think you'd want to get this ability at all if you lower the duration. Like if we had it set to 3 seconds, that would mean that when you miss, which is only a certain chance to begin with, that you, yeah, let's just go with number 1. Whatever, it's the best. We're gonna do that. All right, so now how do we go with number 1? We only have 1 haste buff, and there's no way of identifying that this one is the one that should be tagged. Maybe we could give them IDs or something. That might be a smarter way of doing this. Although, what happens if that buff gets deleted? I guess if you have the one by an ID, then get it. Yeah. Yeah, adarnlearns.corn. I like that idea, and I should probably write this down in a refactoring thing somewhere. Anywhere that we split buffs, just to be able to modify one of those buffs, we should probably instead give buffs an ID and then be able to look them up by ID. For example, Wild Shot should grant a haste buff that gets extended rather than stacking. So we need to find that particular haste buff. If we were to make a Wild Shot haste buff instead, then we would need to modify stat computations, which is a pattern that I've done before and I'm not super happy with. Wheeze Nest Monster. I like it. So, do we have a way of extending the duration of a buff? We have a time remaining, but I'm guessing it's not public. No, protected set. We could just make this public. Yeah, I could also just put a public method on it that says like extend time remaining, but at that point there's no real reason not to just make that public. Okay, so where do we get the haste buff here? Use rapid shot. Here it is. Haste buff, and we just add it. We need to fetch one that exists, and if it doesn't exist, then we add it. So we need to get like the last ID of the haste buff that we used, which means all things need an ID. So here's what I think we're going to do. I think we are going to duplicate haste buff and call this Wild Shot haste buff. And I'll do it the bad way for now, check it in, and then change it. Because it's not going to take too long to do this. Yeah. So this adds a Wild Shot haste buff. Done. And then stat computations when calculating the haste buff. Steady shooting buff. Yeah, see, we already did this. Oops. Whoops. There. All right, so that's the first part of this. The second part of this is getting the buff if it already existed. And I guess we did this with steady shooting, so I should probably just take a look at that. Get buff, steady shooting buff. Oh, this could set you back down to 0. Interesting. Interesting indeed. Whereas this one can just run out. So do we have a way of getting an effect? Get effect. Yes, we do. Get effect with an effect ID. Okay, so let's do this. Wild Shot haste buff existing buff equals. Well, let's start by getting the effects component. Get effect. wild shot haste buff. Oh, what am I doing? Yeah, the only way this would work is if we put a new thing over here too. Yeah, well, this is why I said I wasn't a big fan of this solution, but we're going to change it pretty shortly thereafter. After committing, I mean. Okay, so get this, effect ID, wild shot haste buff. And if that exists, then just extend the length. So if existing buff is not null, then we'll say increase duration. And then we just need this function to exist somewhere. I don't know where it's going to even try to introduce it. Yeah, put it here. I don't want it there. I want it on effect with lifetime. What was that doing there? Oh, I see. Effect with lifetime, timed effect. This is the one with the time remaining? Yes. Let's put this here. Public increase duration. This is a dead simple function. Yep. And now in wild shot, we just do that. Otherwise, add the buff. Cannot implicitly convert type effect to that. Yeah, what would we do here? I guess in this case, we want to cast it. The name C does not exist. Yeah, whoops. All right, I think that'll work. How do we test this? I have no idea. So let's just print this out. Extended duration 2 plus existing buff duration. Yeah, except for it's called time remaining. Do you have a list of buffs that you've implemented or plan to implement? The plan to implement is just as we design stuff. I guess technically the list of buffs is just this list. And some of them are pretty straightforward, basic stat stuff. Like you can increase your dodge chance, you can increase your haste chance, you can increase your power chance, you can decrease how much damage you take, etc., etc. Then some are a little bit less obvious. Like the way that we've coded persistent effects is as buffs. So for example, zombies, when they get hit, will poison the enemy. That's actually a buff that's doing that. It's just a buff with an infinite amount of time. So if I try this, this might work, but it's pretty rare that this will actually happen. So I'll try to kick this off. Let's go to the town and change this stuff. Hire random adventurer, this, rogue, archer. What is this even used for? For the first checkpoint so that balancing the game is a bit easier. What? Do we even do that? Hire random adventurer. This doesn't even exist anymore. Yeah. This is... Oof. All right. Well, that needs to be changed at some point. Hire random adventurer. Or wait, no, it's not hire random adventurer. It was what, get next adventurer? Yeah. Doesn't really need to exist anymore. Or at least it shouldn't be in town.cs. Hello, Lily. Daily implement equipment system feature request. That already happened right there. An archer would have a bow, just stating, totally random facts here. Figured out why grant most things adds more displays to the storeroom than it's allowed. No, I haven't looked into that. Let me write that down as a note. Look into why grant most things is giving too many item displays. Let's take a quick look right now, because it shouldn't be that hard to figure out. We call this upgraded storeroom. We call into that. Add next item display. Add item display. Yeah, okay, I see. We just never check whether we're going over. I'm guessing upgrade storeroom used to be something that was in the town. And we did a check there. Let's look at the history of this. Somewhere I must have deleted the upgrade storeroom button thing, right? Yeah, this is probably the change. And this is probably where I broke everything. Get cost. Must be here. Yep, here it is. Upgrade storeroom. We used to check to see if you'd reach the max level, and we just got rid of that code. So can we put a link to this? Yeah. It's because I deleted the code checking for the max level. Oh, you want me to read the stuff about the domain? I assumed you were just kind of chatting out loud there. Is there something you actually want me to respond to though? This just sounded like a stream of consciousness. What do you want me to say? I haven't ever tried flipping domains, so I'm not too familiar with the space. But I think it's like buy domains you think are going to be needed and then try reaching out to a bunch of people to see if they'll buy it. And it sounds like it'd be a frustrating experience for me. Oh yeah, so we were going to test this, but we needed to do a couple things. We needed to make it so that the archer had like 1,000,000 life. And we probably need to increase their haste, but let's start with that. I just don't want them to die immediately, that's all. So if I go to start battle, do we have... Yeah, we have everything. All right, there's going to be no indication... Why is it dying? What? Why'd they die? That's the archer, right? Oh, that's their power. Whoops. Hey, Dev. And hey, Kevin. Can't ask the worker at the store for help. For the domain stuff. I was thinking Skeleseller workers for a second before reading the rest of your message. All right, so what should happen here is whenever we miss a couple of times in a row, which doesn't even look like that's happening. Why are we dodging that much? Yeah, haste is increasing, but we should see haste or whatever extended by some amount. It's going to be rare though. In fact, it might even be impossible. There was one miss. We need another miss shortly thereafter. Is this impossible? I don't actually know. What did I set these times up to? 7 seconds, and this is 1.7 seconds. So no, this should be possible. It's just very rare. You need a third chance to be hit. No, this should happen frequently. What then did I do wrong? Duration equals this. Yeah, I'll just put a breakpoint here. This should be getting hit somewhat frequently, like once every 6 seconds. Oh my god, that's why. I never put a point into the ability. That's why it's not getting hit. I forgot the archer doesn't start with any of this stuff. That's actually probably a design problem, but it's not a bug technically. We just got to put a point into wild shot, which this is all named wrong, but yeah, whatever. Okay, so there, now it should happen. And like I said, now it should happen frequently enough. We should see a haste extended. Yeah, there it is. Extended duration to 11 seconds, 17 seconds, 23 seconds, 28. Yeah, so this happens pretty frequently. Yeah, I don't know. This is very tough. Am I still using Obsidian? I'm happy with the Switch. Yeah, I'm still using Obsidian. And I would say I'm happy with it. The one thing I want is to have my password protected notes be in Obsidian and have them be like encrypted on disk. But I don't know how I would set that up without writing my own extension, I guess. There might be something out there that does that, but then I have to trust that it's, not just stealing my notes or something. All right, yeah, this is working. This part's fine. Why is the haste level getting up to that much though? It jumped from 100% to 175%. What does wild shot give us? Oh, 15% per level. So that's the plus 75%. Funky Monkey, welcome back. Thank you for the resub. I've got everything set up for today. We should be starting in about an hour. I also made another scene in OBS so that hopefully I can show you and me at the same time and not cover the screen, but we're going to need to spend a little bit of time when we first start the call, just making sure audio is okay and making sure that the layout's okay. Speaking of which, actually, let me type this out so that I don't overload you with information. How do we want to show your presentation? Should you share it with me ahead of time, or do you want to share your screen? Because if you share your screen, then I could get that to work. Yeah, I could get that to work. At least I have an idea for how we would do that. All right, so I'm not happy with this. It's so hard to balance in such a way that you care about this ability. You wouldn't even be able to know that this is active or not. There's just a lot of issues with this. Yeah, I'm not sure. You can share your screen and follow along by presenting. Does it change slides when I do? It wouldn't change slides when you do, no. But yeah, I could change slides, but if you have animations or something you want to like time, I think it'd be difficult. Satchmo, thanks for the resub. Wow, subscribe for 49 months. That's a lot. Forgive me, I'm running on low sleep. No, that's fine. Yeah, whatever's easiest for you, by the way. If you'd want to just share your screen, I can just also share your screen. So I think that should be okay. Just please do keep in mind that there's no like intermediate layer there. So anything you share is going to be seen by everyone on the stream, which means be very careful. You don't have any private windows open. Work's been crazy busy. Yeah, I was going to say, I have not seen your name in a while. I always kind of like seeing when the last time was. Yeah, wow, February. And yet you've been subscribing consistently since then. I had the launch code. Yeah. I don't want anyone accidentally launching things here. Well, welcome back, Satchmo. So I think we have this same problem, which is I don't know how to make this ability work the way I want it to work. So if we stack haste, then you end up with way too much. Well, problems. And if we simply extend the haste duration, then you may end up, well, then there are two problems. Hard to tell how much haste you have at any given time. That can be solved with a tooltip. Or status bar or something. But then the other problem is the haste buff may just sort of last forever. Yeah, what we could do, we could give diminishing returns. Okay, that might be the solution. How about granting haste, but every X hits, not on each hit? It was actually on every miss right now. We're talking about wild shot. And I think we'd have the same general problem, which is either we make it so that it's either not desirable or that it's super desirable. It's really hard to hit that middle ground. And I think diminishing returns would be that middle ground. So we could make this stack, but then change how it stacks. Yeah, actually, we could just code a custom like curve for this. We could say you get X%, and then the next time you get like, I don't know, 0.75 X% or 75% of X%. Something like that, right? Yeah. And then so on and so forth, like half and then a quarter, and then who knows, maybe it bottoms out at like 5%, something like that. Would it be based on the current remaining time? I am not sure. I think if there's, yeah, I'm not sure. I think what we should do is maybe both of these. Maybe we extend the duration, and if it was already going, we give you like one more stack of haste, and the stacks add up like this. So maybe X is 15. So you get plus 15%, and then 75 times 15. It's a little bit more than 11, yeah. Plus 11.5% plus 7.5% plus a third of that. I don't know, I'm just going to estimate 3%, and dot, dot, dot. So what does this end up equaling? 26, 33, 34, 37. Yeah, maybe it kind of caps out at like effectively 40%. So that could be kind of interesting. Less value based on how many stacks were applied. You mean just change these coefficients? Because, yeah, I don't know what this is going to actually feel like in the game. It might feel like, well, that's way too fast. What happens? You go from 5 to 3 and get a new one? Does it give you stack 4, stack 6? So the way I was thinking of doing this is there'd be some buff in the background. We call this like wild shot haste buff. And it has a like num stacks in it. And every time... Oh, we can't do it that way. Because, yeah, we need to track the durations individually. I mean, we could end up coding a way around this. We could just like track whenever a wild shot haste buff leaves the entity, and when it does change num stacks. Diminishing returns. Yeah. There are other ways we could do this, but I think the diminishing returns thing might be okay. So that way you at least feel like your character's getting faster, but they don't get infinitely faster. We could also just cap how many of these buffs can apply. To be honest, I do think the best thing at this point is probably just code something and not even necessarily the diminishing returns, and then come back to this later. I think the archer is, I don't know, just not the best right now. Let's see. Each consecutive hit increases haste by X% up to a maximum. And then you get a dodge bonus when you get hit. Then split shot. I think split shot works fine. And wild shot. Single target attack with a 25% chance to miss. Upon missing, increase haste. Yeah, I think the diminishing returns is the way to go. This haste bonus is subject to diminishing returns. And maybe we could even write something in here, like X% the first time to whatever, 0.5 times X%. Something like that. Hi, Alfred. What are we working on today? We are working on the archer, and then in a little less than an hour, we're going to be inviting fnkymnky on the stream to teach me some UI and UX stuff. I'm looking forward to that. Okay, so I think let's go with this. Let's go with the diminishing returns way. So how do we want this to work? I guess every time you get this buff, we add another wild shot haste stack buff. Well, guest be on voice. So yeah, voice and video. Yeah. And then every time you miss, we add another one of these. And then add a wild shot haste buff to the entity as soon as it comes into existence. And whenever adding or removing a wild shot haste stack buff, modify wild shot haste buff. Every stack has its own buff, or will you be replacing the previous one? So the way I'm thinking of this working is this will stack up. So every time you miss, you just get another one of these. And this does literally nothing. It's just the existence of it we can count. So then we have a, maybe we should call this like wild shot. Maybe like a recent miss or something like that. Yeah, maybe something like that. Yeah, and then we just count how many you have inside this thing and apply a certain amount of haste as a result. It'll work. It's a little weird. Yeah, I think we're going to code this. Yeah, let's do it. Okay, which means that we need to give you this as soon as you enter the battle. Which I don't know if we even have a way of doing that. Base ability. Do we have an initialize? Yeah, called at the beginning of the instance. Cool. Hey, Ski. Ski, I shared the good news. Ski's a member of the team now. Ski's helping out with stuff. All right, so here we got to add a buff. And this is going to be the haste buff. Entity, I guess, is source. Haste percent is actually 0, and duration is going to be infinite. So this is not something with the duration. This is just, God, I never remember what it's called. But we could just look at steady shooting buff and see what that one is. It's just an effect. Yeah. All right, so effect. We don't have a duration. We get rid of that. We can actually get rid of the percent increase too. We could just set this to 0 by default. It's true. All right, so you get this buff. Public members should come before what? Protected, I guess? Yeah. And then you need to get stacks of the miss buff. All right, so that's going to be in effect for the lifetime. Oh, semicolon after. We don't want that. In fact, we want this to be a get set sort of thing. All right, now there should be a miss buff, and that should be like anything else, like haste buff, pretty much. All right, so we save this as wild shot recent miss buff. Oops. We don't even count this. We don't have a percent increase here. Hey, Pre-Technic. This is applied to the player when they miss with wild shot. It increases, no, it doesn't do anything. So it has a duration and will eventually fall off, which means that we can use the existence of any how do we type a link to this and not have the name change? Cref equals that. Yeah. Use the existence of this to figure out how much haste to apply. Yeah. Even count as work time for me. It probably could. You could look at it as lecture content. What time is it? I'm very interested and don't want to miss it. So it's currently 9:17, so about 43 minutes from now. So not too far away. Maybe if you want to be, exactly accurate, maybe add another 3 minutes for, setup stuff. But then again, who knows? I would just show up on roughly 40 minutes. Because maybe the setup is actually fine. Yeah, giving you on the front end team at work. Yeah. Well, like I said, I'm really looking forward to it. I think it's gonna be great. and I really liked fnkymnky's work in the past. And we had a prep session, and I was like, "This is golden. Let's do it." All right, so we need to know when this drops off of an entity. Do we ever do this somewhere else? I guess, yeah, poison debuff does it. We have added and removed from entity. All right, so we want to do the same thing over here, right? Whenever this is added to the entity, we're going to say update wild shot haste buff. And whenever it's removed, we want to do the same thing. Then we just write that here. Private void update. Oh, we probably need to pass in the entity. Wait, do we? There's an affected entity there. Huh, I don't know what order this gets called in. Let's go find out. Where do we call this? ECS.add component. On effect added. Oh my God, where do we call this thing? Here. Ah, yeah, so it already exists at the time. And the effect knows who's affected to the point where I kind of wonder, what did I even do here? Entity is a node 2D as opposed to a node. Okay. Yeah. This seems like it's not needed. Yeah, it seems like it's not needed. I'm going to write a note about that. Seems like effect dot added to entity and effect dot remove from entity don't need to pass in the entity, since it should just be affected entity. Just set a breakpoint and see if that's true before changing the function signature. I wonder if this would qualify. fnkymnky. A whole bunch of people in chat are like, this is work experience. You should charge them, fnkymnky. Don't charge me, just charge them. It's CPD after all. All right, so since I don't think we care about this, I think we can just do this here. So what we want to do is get the, oh, nice. It already figures pretty much all this out, huh? Non-generic method cannot be used with type arguments. Haste buff. There. All right, so if it's null, then actually it can't be null. Yeah, I guess we need to throw an error if it's null. Yeah. Well, can we do that? No. We do that though, right? Oh, the stupid operator should not appear at the end of the line. I don't remember what causes that. I wonder if just rebuilding fixes it though. Okay, so now update that. We'll say like set haste or update haste amount. Yeah, that's it. Okay, now we need a method over there. Public. Hey, Krasner. And hey, Mystical Cell. I'm doing well. If I sub as payment, can I expense it? Sub for 40 months in a row. Put it on your company. All right, is it going to still complain about this? I think it might. It's really hard to tell. I'll just restart this. Right off Discord Nitro. People be like, nah, it's totally reasonable. Yeah. They must have watched a stream where somebody came onto the stream and gave them UI and UX advice. It happens all the time. All right, yeah, it is complaining about this. All right, how do we stop that from happening then? You really do write it off? Well, well, well. I should probably actually write things off too. I buy things in conjunction with business stuff and then don't actually write it off. I'll worry about this later. Okay, so update haste amount. So the way this works is we need to get how many of these stacks that you have, and effects component has a way of doing that. Get effects of type, yeah. So this goes into wild shot haste buff. All right, so effects component EC. Are you not going to fill this in for me? Why not? Yeah, there we go. All right, delete all this stuff. Then get effects of type. Var foo equals ec.that effect ID dot recent miss. So recent miss buffs. Oops. Oh, darn it. I didn't mean to do that. I don't know where that just put that. Okay, well, hopefully we... There was get effects. Where I just copied it. Yeah, right there. Get effects of type. What did I paste in? Get effects of type. Huh, weird. Oh, effects. Oh, drat. That's not what I wanted. Oh, this is first or default. Okay, I want to get effects of ID. We just have one get effect? How is that even possible? How is that possible? What does stack computations do? How do we figure out how much haste you have? Oh, we literally just go through all of the effects and check that way. Okay. Well, we're gonna go make a new thing then. So this will be just get effects of ID. Effect ID, and then just paste that in there. There. Now this should probably first or default. Yeah, so we should just say return get effects of ID first or default. There. All right, we're getting there. I know this is tedious. Wild shot haste buff. All right, recent miss buffs get effect of ID. Good. And then based on the number of this and based on the level of rapid shot, I guess is where we want to modify this. This is a pain. So all I really care about is the number of those. Num recent misses. And then we need to apply something here. Was there anything else that I had that I wanted to look at? This. Use rapid shot. Yeah, so how this is going to work is we just add a recent miss buff. Buff equals new entity duration. And then add the buff. Okay. We don't need this stuff about haste percent here. I guess we can delete that. Oh wait, we need the duration. Although that's just a constant, so whatever, let's just type that in. All right, now we go into wild shot haste and we type this stuff in. All right, so haste percent equals level. The level is this thing. Get for entity. This is going to be affected entity. This is a little weird of how all this stuff is working, but whatever. I want to see if it works and then consider changing how it works. We don't actually have a duration thing here. That doesn't matter. Stat computations, wild shot, haste buff. There it is, yeah. All right, haste percent. So we just set percent increase to that. Yeah, and then apply some sort of scaling factor here. So what's a good formula for this? It's got to be a curve that goes to 0. So maybe like 1 minus x squared. 1 minus x squared. I don't know if this is a good idea. Is there a chart here? There's no chart here. How do you do this? Gonna make me type this out. Is there a way to like make a table of 1 minus x squared? Oh, there we go. Yeah. Let me think about this. So this is like the percentage offset we're going to apply. So when you have 1 stack of this, then you get the full amount. And when you have 2 stacks, then you don't get the full amount. I'm trying to think if an exponential change is good. I think it is. And I think we just need to make this actually be a proper formula here now. Okay, so let's think about this. 100% to like, I don't know, 75%-ish to maybe like 40%, and then who cares, whatever's lower than that. I think by like a factor of 30 each time. We could even just make this linear. Yeah, we could. I think that's fine. Just subtract maybe even 20% each time. Okay, so float multiplier equals 1 plus the number of recent misses minus 0.2. This is not what I want. I just want this. Something like that. I don't know what the actual number here. And then we just cap it at like 2. Math.min 2 and that. All right, so level times that times multiplier. Okay, who knows what this is actually equal to? So let's print out some things here. Updated haste amount to percent increase. Yeah, this is assuming all of this even works, which it might. We also have this, which I don't need here. Well, this could print out the total haste. Yeah. So wild shot haste buff is equal to this. Total haste is equal to this. All right. That's not going to print out every single time though. This would have, so I guess let's leave this in. And let's launch this and just see what happens. So you get, I should just write out what these numbers are. This is ridiculous. All right, let's just put 1 point in this, which should be 15% per level. So you can go from 15% up to 30%, and you do it in increments of 1/5 of the value you got. So I guess in 3% intervals, APX. Let's try that. So I guess it doesn't really matter which instance I go to, but they shouldn't die too fast. So I guess this instance is fine. Yeah, let's just see what happens over here. So haste is going to go up. There we go. Wild shot haste buff, 18%. Yeah, that was a mistake. I'm counting the original stack of it. 18%. But yeah, it is going up by 3%. Okay. This is better. This is definitely better. Because this can't get like wildly out of control. The other one could. And that was the issue that we had. So what I meant to do is this -1. Do you know what's a max stack? So you try 1 times 0.95 to the 2x minus 1 times 0.95 to the 2x minus 1. Max stacks. Are we increasing the duration of this actually? No, we're not increasing the duration. So the maximum number of stacks we can figure out. It's just really, really hard to figure out. But we can miss up to 1 time every 1.7 seconds. 1 miss every 1.7 seconds. Your bait, oh man, this is super complex. So steady shooting can increase your haste by up to 25%. So 1.7 times 0.75. So it's actually every 1 point this many seconds. And then your haste can go up when you miss by up to, we said 75% times the multiplier, so like 150%, which should put you at 175%. God, how's the cooldown of that work? I have no idea. Oh, we multiply this by the amount of time that passes. So I guess we just divide. I don't know. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. There needs to be a minimum to clamp to 1. Yeah. I gotta change that. All right, how does clamp work? The value min max. Okay, good. So value min. Oh, the minimum should be, yeah, 1, I guess. And the maximum should be 2, we're saying. All right, let's go try some other things now. Let's try changing steady shooting so that you always dodge forever. So at some point, you'll just max this out. Should be 0 to 1 diminishing. This is the multiplier of your bonus that you get. So this should go from 1 to 2, meaning that you always get your, like, if this is 15%, you always get 15%, and you can go up to a higher amount than that. But yeah, you should minimally have it be set to, the multiplier should be set to 1 minimally. Sorry, I meant the formula because the first shot goes above 1. Oh, I see. I see. I would have looked at this as a bonus on top of the 1. So this would be what multiplier is set to. I guess you add 1. Anyway, let's try this out. Yeah, I did. Yeah, because we don't have too much more time left, and I want to see how this looks. So we're going to put the most points we can into rapid shot. And that's the only thing that increases your haste, right? Yeah, none of the other things do. Well, steady shooting does, but we already maxed that out pretty much. So, oop, it crashed. I got to figure out why that's happening because I don't think that has to do with me. Is input handled? All right, I'm just going to copy paste this for now, although I don't think this is all that helpful. I keep getting a crash when Trying to form my first party in the game. All right, just ignore that for now. Those things worry me because I think their engine crashes. I'm not positive, but I think they are. And if they are, that means that I either need to start digging into engine code or that I need to hope that someone else is doing that. Okay, so how fast can you possibly fire arrows? We should eventually only see dodges. So as soon as the damage numbers go away, it looks like they have. Yeah, there are no damage numbers anymore. So that means that you're at maximum haste through that. So the wild shot haste buff is going up to about 120%. It can only go up to 150. Yeah, there, it hit 150. Okay, so we're at maximum haste now, 275. And yeah, I guess we're shooting a bunch of arrows. That's not too crazy. And it is eventually dropping. Okay. I think this is all right. Let's see what it looks like when we put the maximum number of points into rapid shot, or no, forked arrows. And what does this one do? Guarantees a crit every so often. Sure, whatever. Pierce armor doesn't make any difference. It's not going to change how many arrows there are, I mean. All right, now we repeat the battle, and now we take a look. So we should be firing tons and tons of arrows again, but they should be splitting a lot of the time and hitting other targets. Why are they never splitting? Oh, there they go. And this represents what the archer would be at its most powerful. It's level 1, which is why it's doing like no damage. I feel like if this represents the highest possible power, that we should turn this into slightly more of a machine gun and just lower the cooldowns on the archer's shots and then change the damage so that they match. But there is one problem with that, which is this. Pierce armor. Upon hitting, increased enemy damage taken. So if you shoot these super fast, you might make enemies start taking like ludicrous amounts of damage. But that is on wild shot. Maybe split shot should just have a lower cooldown then. Split shot. Let's set this from 3.2 down to, I don't know, 1.6. Yeah, let's cut it in half. And then let's scale down the power a little bit. Let's see what that looks like. So I got to figure out how haste actually works here. Let me take a look. What are we doing? There's an active ability and we have like some update cooldown, and this should take haste into account. Something needs to take haste into account. What in the world? Maybe update cooldown passes in the haste value? Yes, haste multiplier. There it is. So delta times haste multiplier. So that means that if haste were 100%, that you are cutting this in half. Right? Because your haste multiplier would be 2. Cut cooldown in half. So what we're really doing is saying cooldown divided by haste plus 1. Yeah, so we're ending up with or I guess haste bonus. So we have a cooldown of 1.6 divided by 2.5, so 0.64. So we should be firing arrows pretty frequently. Let's put points in all those abilities again. This, some crit, it doesn't really matter. And then start our battle. So now split shot should be firing twice as fast to begin with. And after they get to their max haste bonus, they should be shooting lots and lots of arrows. And this technically isn't even the ceiling. There could be buffs from other characters. But yeah, I think as an end game for the archer, that this is much more interesting. Okay. So also a stat like accuracy? No, there isn't. Every attack always hits unless the target has some buff granting them dodge, or the ability itself has some chance to miss just baked in. So this ability, Wild Shot, has a chance to miss just baked into it. All right, well, there's one other little issue that we've got here. Balance the archer. Probably need some baseline percent chance of the abilities working so that they don't always need skill points. But yeah, I think we've coded this. How often are we hovering at the maximum haste percent? Wait, how did we get up to 275? One 170. Oh, yeah. Okay. Because of the 25 from steady shooting. In fact, actually, that seems like a very minor haste bonus now, huh? At this point, writing simulations will be super hard. The simulations, though, are going to need to be. They would have needed to just involve all the rules of the battle anyway, such that we're just running battles. So yeah, I think that's still what we'll have to do. What are the odds that you even get to this level with steady shooting? Probably incredibly slim. Also, this probably becomes the most impactful ability. Oh man. All right, let's change steady shooting so it's back to normal. That you're probably not actually getting a crazy amount from this. Let's maybe tweak wild shot a little bit. The miss chance should probably be 25%. Well, 35% and giving you a haste bonus means that you're buffing yourself no matter what, which I like. It didn't work that way with the warrior because you had taunt instead. So 7 seconds and 15% per level. We could make the duration scale up. Did it finish the battle yet? It hasn't. Okay, let's speed this up. I want to see what happens once we add in the pierce with all this haste. God, it takes so long. All right, let's put 5 points into pierce armor. It'll pierce 25% for I don't know how long. We gotta wait for this stupid battle to finish. And there we go. Okay, so average DPS is 28. I see the error here too. I think I know what's causing that. I think this is for arrows that are still in flight when the battle ends. And I think I have that written down somewhere. Yeah. This happens even when battles naturally end. Okay, now we repeat that battle. And now instead of 28 DPS, it should be a lot higher. Yeah, you can see all the pierces happening here. I'm just not sure how much higher. So I want to see what this is. Because again, this is like the best case scenario of you piercing enemy defense. And I guess the real problem is when there's only like one enemy and then all the pierce debuffs stack on that enemy and you start doing like crazy damage. Yeah, I think we saw that toward the end of that battle. And you can see a lot of the numbers popping up are like 5s, 6s, 10s, 12s. Every once in a while there's like a 17. I think that's because of critting. But then once there's only one enemy left, then all the debuffs stack on that enemy. DPS went up to 31. So not a crazy benefit. In fact, almost no benefit. Is it when the archer misses? Yeah. Pierce and damage are shown above the enemy. Yeah, I think with projectiles, you probably would expect it to show on the enemy. I'm not sure. I'm going to write that down somewhere. When a character misses, perhaps it should show on the enemy, not the character doing the attack. Testing this with just 9 skill points. No, I'm testing this with more than you're allowed to get in the game. I put in practically everything here. But I think Pierce Armor, I think this is all just balanced poorly. I coded everything. It's working. It's just, I'm not sure I'm happy with this. This lasts for 5 seconds and pierces for 5%. And it can stack. And now you can shoot. Oh, you can only shoot like one of these per second though. So best case scenario, you can get probably 5 of these on an enemy so that they're taking 125% damage, which is pretty crazy. Makes the archer very good in single target combat, which is not really as designed, I guess. But the odds of that happening are also very slim. So I think we probably just need to boost this a little bit. All right. Yeah. I think what we need to do then is check in what I've done. Yeah, we have a little bit of time for this. Can a pierce projectile pierce or fork again? So pierce in this case is piercing armor. It's not actually like going through the enemy. But no, fork cannot fork again. So it's only split into 2 and not split into like 4 or something. And I know there's a lot going on in this battle, but the only arrows that can pierce are the ones from split shot. Or sorry, the only ones that can split are the ones from split shot. So it's not like every arrow has a chance to split. It's only from a certain ability. And currently they both look the same, but I want to change the color at least. Yeah. For laughs, let's try increasing the level of the archer here. Where level up adventure. There we go. Oh, but then they don't have infinite life anymore because I only made them have infinite life at level 1. All right, well, whatever. Let's go to an earlier dungeon then and try that. Just want to see how much damage they're generally doing. Yeah, quite a lot. But that's probably not saying a whole lot because this is just overpowered. What we need to do is compare them against the other classes. Like that just did 64 DPS. If we were to go hire a mage and give them some skills here and put them into a battle. And let's speed this up a little bit. That was strange. The fireball didn't move. All right, they did 48. Oh, I think the archer is being given extra power from something right now. I don't recall. Are they dodging everything? 58. How much does the rogue do? Well, the rogue is ripping through them. The rogue is 81. Yeah, so it's not like drastically stronger, I guess. I don't know. We're gonna have to put some more thought into that. But yeah, clean up what I've done. I'll look at this really fast, then I want to take a break. We still got to balance all these things. All right, get rid of that. Pierce armor, wild shot. This isn't really, well, I guess it is use rapid shot. Okay. Get rid of this. Damage received is for pierce armor. Yeah, looks good. Damage received debuff, sounds good. All right, so this is a bit unusual. Well, a haste buff specifically for wild shot. The reason this has custom code is because there should be diminishing returns on the haste granted. So we base the amount of haste on how many recent misses you had. Yeah. All right. Hey, Sinistella. All right, we still have that issue there. And I still don't exactly know what to do about that. Wonder how we fix this somewhere else. Didn't I do this somewhere else? I did. It must have been for something I coded somewhat recently. So either it would be split shot or maybe steady shooting. I wonder. Might have been for good effect. Or maybe it was for the summoner. I don't know. Not appear at the end of the line. change to as. Does that work? That. I don't know. Let me rebuild this again. Dereference a possibly null value. Okay, we're not going to do this way then. Fine, we'll just do this. Oh, wait, we can't even do that. Oh my God. All right, well, there's one other way we can do this, which is to just make it not complain by saving this. Yeah. Yeah, this is stupid that I even need to do this. But I think it should fix it. And then I think to show that it's fixed, we need to reopen this. I gotta take a break. I can't. Yeah, I gotta take a break. All right, I'll be right back. And then we're gonna switch into the Funky Monkey segment right after this. So you all have fun playing Jump Time. Is it jump time? It's jump time. Hey again. Okay, close the game. We're gonna switch very quickly into the UI stuff. We're on time, by the way. That's I ended abruptly as I was looking through the commit because I don't want to hold up Funky Monkey or anything. Of Icy Tower, yeah. I don't think I've played Icy Tower. Maybe I have. Take a look at the No, I think I played it once or twice. I haven't played a lot though. Okay, so for those who don't know, fnkymnky has helped me design a couple of sites. So adamlearns.com, Adam Leads, and the homepagerizer, and then also some little things here and there, like the points website was designed by fnkymnky. And fun note on this, I didn't even ask fnkymnky to do this. fnkymnky is just like, hey, you want to design on the website? Here it is. And I was like, yes, please, and thank you. And then I implemented it. So we're gonna have, I think, at least an hour, and I'm totally fine if fnkymnky needs to go sooner or we just cover as much as we need to cover. I have some notes. He asked me to figure out the sort of information hierarchy that I have. So I'm gonna call him up and we're gonna kind of see how this goes. So let me change scenes here slightly, turn off my keyboard camera, and dial up the fnkymnky. Hello, hello.
Oh,
Can you hear me? Hello?
2 seconds.
Wait, Drat, I want to change this size. Oh, God. Okay, I think we're both having some issues here, although I don't know what I did.
Hello.
Yeah, oh man. I had this thing set up just fine, and now this is broken.
I can hear you now if you can hear me.
You can hear me? Okay, I can hear you, but I have messed up how your video shows up on stream, and I don't know an easy way to fix it. So I have notes taken on it, but I'm going to try to make it like kind of good enough for right now, and we'll just make do. Give me a sec. But yeah, so how about this? Let's start with an audio test so the chat can tell me. How did your day go? You said you were tired.
Yeah, I just got back from New York like 3 or 4 days ago, so my sleep has been a bit all over the place.
Yeah. Oh man, I'm sorry to hear that. Chat,
Sorry
how
about
does
that.
the audio level sound?
Audio's a bit goosed. 2 seconds.
Okay. Audio's fine. Okay.
Okay, try now.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay, cool. Yeah, and I asked about audio and they said that it sounds good too. So cool. I think oh, he's a little too loud. Okay, I'll turn him down just a touch. Let me know again, chat, if anything is ever problematic here. But hi, fnkymnky. Do you want to do a brief intro for yourself so that it's your words and not mine?
Yeah, absolutely. So about me, I guess I'm a senior UI UX designer, so I'm probably the guy that a lot of your audience deal with in terms of design. So I pass on a lot of design stuff to developers and help them therefore build it. Been in the industry for about 15 years or so. I started off as like a web designer, like working in HTML, CSS and stuff, and I've always had a bit of an interest in the back end dev side stuff too. So that's kind of like what brought me to watching your stream. And yeah, I use it as a little bit of a motivation thing as well to kickstart my own on the side jobs as well. So that's sort of like what's kept me around all these times.
Well, cool. It's definitely symbiotic. You've helped out the stream a lot and the sites that I've made, and now you're about to help Skeleseller. So
Yeah.
I was telling everyone I did a little bit of an exercise. First, actually, I'm not sharing my screen with you, and I'm not sure it's going to be easy to do. But I sent you the UI notes that I took, and I didn't take any more since then. We might have some little difficulties as we do this, but do you want to go through your presentation first that you prepared?
Yeah, so a little bit of context first, I guess, would be helpful in terms of the presentation. So I'm not really sure where you lie in terms of your knowledge of like UI, UX. So what I wanted to do for both you and the audience a little bit is give a little bit of a 101 primer on what UI, UX is and what it isn't, and then start to explore some of the high level concepts. So it's more of like a primer. and then start to delve into specifically like the game, some things to think about with the game, and then maybe in the end we can sort of explore some ideas around that on like a whiteboard type of idea, and put together some wireframes and stuff like that, and see what your thoughts are around that. You might want to break it up into like a different session as well, depending on time. But if that's cool with you, then we can get cracking.
Yeah, it's definitely cool with me. I do want to say, I know you just said you're tired, you were in New York. If at any point you're like, you know what, half an hour is all I want to do today, totally fine. So please don't hesitate to be like, that's it, I'm done. I can't handle you anymore, Adam.
No, no
Otherwise, I'm
problem at
ready.
all.
I'm ready.
No problem. I do forgive me in advance. I realise I do have a very thick Scottish accent, so I'm having to put on a bit of a what we would call a posh accent. So if I regress back into my thicker Scottish accent and people can't understand me, I do apologise in advance. But
Okay.
yeah, let's get started
All
anyway.
right, sure.
So I've got this presentation. I don't know how to share it. If I share my screen on Discord, will that come through okay?
We will see. I will probably need to do a little bit of tweaking to make sure this still looks good. Oh, drat, I just changed the size of the window. Okay. But yeah, why don't you
Right.
try it out and I'll see if I can show it.
Okay. There we go.
Because I think what I'm going to do, we don't have anything private in our chat right now. So I think I'm just going to share the entire Discord screen and
Okay.
that should work. In fact, let me just do that now. Okay. I guess I could even full screen this. Yeah, there we go. Okay, I do not see your screen yet though. Oh, wait, there it is. Give me one sec. Okay, cool. I'm gonna, is there some way that I can easily show you and there's probably a way to do this in Discord and I just don't know how. Grid, there we go. All right, well, whatever. All right, so sorry, I recognize this is me wasting your time. So let's just start with this. Yeah.
It's all good. It's all good. So this isn't too formal of a presentation. I haven't really rehearsed it or anything like that. I kind of threw it together the past couple of days. So it is very high level. It's very quick. It's not rehearsed, so do forgive me on that respect. But it should cover like the basics at a high level. And then if you have any questions as well, just feel free to jump in and interrupt me and stuff like that, and we can cover more specific stuff.
Okay.
I do want to get it back to the game at some point, and revolve around game UI, UX, and design stuff as well. But if you want to ask any specific questions around it, feel free to jump in.
Gotcha. Okay.
So first of all, yeah, just a quick UX UI 101. The first thing I wanted to clarify is what is UI and UX, like what's the difference between them? I hear a lot of people confuse the two. I think they're the same thing, and they're very much not the same thing. So for the purposes of clarity, let's go through like what the difference is, just so we're on the same level. So UX obviously stands for user experience, and this is about what the user thinks and how they feel when they're playing your game or using your product if it's like a web product. And again, just a little bit of background on this, I'm not an expert in like game UI UX design. It's more like product and service UI UX and web stuff, but a lot of the same kind of theory applies to this as well. And again, I'll try and bring it back to the game as much as I can. So yeah, the user experience is how the user feels and thinks as they're going through it. Some things to think about when this as well is we're thinking about how they think and how they feel, and let's cover some of the high level categories of how you might feel going through this experience, right? So positive experiences. So if you're excited, you're stimulated, you're having fun. Obviously, being a game, you're going to want to live in this area as much as possible. Some other services and products don't always live in this, and that's okay. So like you might be more on the neutral side or the negative side. Sometimes these are just unavoidable ways that a user will feel, but they're very much necessary. And I always tie this back to things like if you have to fill out a tax return, either going to be feeling neutral about it or negative about it. Most of the time, you're not always going to be feeling positive about it. Part of the job of UX design is to try and relieve that negativity or make things more positive in general. So yeah, you're working on a game. You want people to feel excited, to feel stimulated, to feel like they're having fun. The neutral side of it is, again, even in games, sometimes you might find this, is users might feel neutral about large portions of your game, but that might be for a reason. So it might be a necessary task that you have to do, There might be sort of upfront things you have to do you don't like, but there'll be a big payoff later. These are the sorts of things to think about when users are feeling in that neutral state. And then the negative side of it, which we'll obviously want to avoid as much as possible, but you're feeling angry, you're feeling frustrated, overwhelmed, confused. You don't want your users to be in that space. If you are, then that's when you start getting drop off and people not playing the game or enjoying it at all. So yeah, when it comes to user experience, we're primarily operating in those three categories and thinking about how users feel. There's a whole other subsection to this, which is like user research, where you would interview users, survey users, use qualitative and quantitative measures to find out how people feel about various parts of the experience at various stages. That's where UX research comes into it. So the whole UX field has all these sort of sub areas that break different parts of it down in terms of the process. UX design then takes that research and tries to come up with solutions to make that experience better. So again, just a point of clarity around user experience, UX research, UX design. They're all kind of their own little thing, with UX being the overarching category to that.
Okay, sounds good so far. By the way, one quick question: can you see my video?
Your
Like me?
webcam?
Yeah.
No, I can't. No.
Oh, you can't. Okay, sorry. Let me turn that on because you can't see me. Not. Oh wait. Oh, maybe I don't have a way to show you. Unless I click this. There. Now I'm guessing you can see me.
Nope.
Did that even change? All right. Well, sorry.
You don't need to worry about it. It's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, so again, just point of clarity, UX design is looking at the flow and construction of the overall experience. The UI part of it is part of that. So the UI is a subset of UX design. User experience design can look at things outside of the main product itself. So that could be things like the emails that users get or players get, it's communications, it's the website they're on before they get there, it's all the other stuff surrounding it. The UI is like just a little part of the bigger UX design piece.
Okay.
So, what are some things that affect UX? So, really, just some things for you to think about, I guess, in terms of pointers and things to look out for and bear in mind. Visuals, obviously. Some of these first ones are pretty obvious, but it's good to go through them. So, things like the artwork, the text that you have on page, both in terms of how that text looks, what the text is actually saying, and how big it is, that type of thing, that all affects it. And animations as well. So animations add a lot of visual delight, stimulation, these sorts of things. So again, just some things to think about. Sound, obviously the sound effects of a game and the music. Obviously very important for a game specifically. For like digital products, maybe not so much, but you'll see apps like Duolingo make really good use of sound effects. They get those like dopamine stimulating, checking off type sounds when you complete stuff and you do things well. Again, these are things that make a user feel good and add a little bit of sensory stimulation to the experience. Touch, probably more important for things like mobile games, but things like haptic feedback is also very important and something that would be good to think about on the mobile side. The process and flow that a user has to go through. So, what do I have to do in order to complete a task, and is it enjoyable? So you're going to have to want, or you're going to want to think about that for a lot of the things that you do. If there is a task that is creating a party, what do I have to do in order to do that? Is it clear? Is it simple? Is everything signposted and labeled correctly? And most of all, when it comes to a game, is this process enjoyable? So thinking about that in the back of your head as well is a good thing to think about.
Gotcha.
Speed is another big one. How long does it take to complete the task that I'm doing? Is there a lot of waiting around or loading? So probably more common in like the web app space is like load times. If you submit a form, is it taking ages to change the page? How do you inform users that something's actually happening or processing in the background? Are they just seeing a blank screen with nothing happening and then 5 seconds later the page changes? The speed at which things happen is very important. Obviously, the quicker it happens, the better. But sometimes too quick can be bad as well, right? So if you're flashing something on screen, you don't give someone long enough to read it before it disappears. for example. That's the negative side of something being quick too. So thinking about how long things take to do, both in terms of the task as a whole, and also how quickly and responsive the UI feels around that, is important to bear in mind. Difficulty in completing a task as well. So again, when it comes to a game, you're looking at the difficulty of something versus the payoff. Some people really like really difficult games. I'm trying to think of the name of that jumping game that's like you have to keep jumping as high as you get, and if you fall off, you're back to the start. You know, it's quite difficult, but the payoff can be quite good in the sense that not a lot of people can do it. Therefore, you're one of the few people that can do it, so it feels really good in that sense. But yeah, difficulty of something generally. When, again, going back to the web app side of things, you want to make things as easy as possible. But with games, there can be varying levels of difficulty. Some people like an easy playthrough. They like something that's quite easy and calm. Other people like competitiveness and things like that. So something to think about.
Gotcha.
Any prerequisite knowledge someone might have to do in order to complete a task as well. So if you're thinking about building a party, for example, in a game, is there any knowledge I need to know before I build my party? Like, should I have a range of different skill types in my party, or is it a good idea to go with all the same type of character? What are the benefits and drawbacks of doing that? How do you let users know that something might be better than the other option? These types of things. Is there any prerequisite knowledge, and how do you tell users about that knowledge beforehand if they need to know it?
So I want to interject for a second here. Yeah. There are all these categories, and it makes sense as you're explaining them. I'm guessing you're at an experience level now where this is just sort of natural to you to think about. But would you recommend for someone like me to look through the game and just think of, okay, difficulty, is this the right level of difficulty, or, you know, process and flow or speed? Should I break it down? Like, how will I gain the feel for this?
Sure. So there's some prerequisite tasks you would probably do first before you start thinking about these overall. So when I asked you to create the sort of information architecture type document, which is basically just a breakdown of what are all the different systems in the game and what can you do from various points and how do you access different things, that in a way helps you think about the flow high level. So going back to like flow, if you're thinking about the battle system, you take the battle system as one piece. You start to bullet point all the various actions you can do in a battle system. How do they relate to one another? Is there one action that is the opposite of another? Are there primary actions and secondary actions? These are the sorts of things you'll start to do in that task. So you would bullet point them all, prioritize them in terms of what's the primary actions, what's the secondary, what's the tertiary. Is there any actions that relate to other actions? And just almost like bullet point note all these things and take that stuff down. Then that's where things like wireframes come in very helpful, because you can start to drag these bullet points onto the page, figure out where they're going to live, and then think about like positioning, sizing, color, what's should be the most obvious, what's not that obvious, what do you not really need here. You can start to cut things out of your screen. So those various tasks that I might sort of get you to do or help you through that utilize these sort of key category topics as part of them. But yeah, in general, like anything you do, you want to be thinking about these categories high level. And I guess, yeah, that maybe is something for me that is sort of ingrained just from my own knowledge. Maybe it's not something that comes to you naturally when you're doing something. Something that was the guy's name, Mel, that you had the interview with that you released yesterday.
Oh yeah.
He mentioned something about how developers, when they're developing a game, they think about it quite logically and programmatically, whereas that's maybe not how a user might think of it.
Yeah.
So yeah, you've kind of got to bring yourself out of that sort of state to think about, okay, how would a user think about this? How might someone try to break this?
Yeah. Do you have any? Okay, so I think this is where user research comes in, because if you can't put yourself in the shoes of a user, then you just look at users who are already in their own shoes, of course. But is there some way you snap yourself out of while you're making a product? How are people going to think about this? What are they going to be confused by? Like, how do you snap yourself to that that perspective that a user has.
Yeah, that's exactly what you do. You do some form of user research.
I see.
Um, Obviously, if your pool of users at the moment is non-existent, like you don't have a product, then you don't have users to necessarily use. But what you can use is look for your theoretical users. And there's some resources later on in the presentation. I found a few links specifically around game design, around user research that might help a little bit. Some of them are quite workshoppy type tasks. It's like create a user persona, like what's your ideal user? Um, what type of what type of game would your user enjoy? Do they like competitive games? Do they like calm, relaxing games? You know, these types of things. What do they look for in a game? And if you can find people that suit that persona, you can put the game in front of them and ask them their opinion quite early on.
I see.
Um, so some of it is instinctual, like you'll obviously have an instinct to be like, I think this button should go there, and I think it should be this size and that color. You then test that reasoning against who the user might be, ask them what they think, what comes to mind. And to be honest, these types of things, there is a skill in user research and in that sort of thing as well, especially on user interviews. It's very easy to get a user on a call and say, "What do you think?" and not lead them down a path and give them leading questions and almost get them to tell you what they think you want to hear.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, it's quite hard to ask an open question and get an honest answer back.
I find,
So
and I don't want to derail the presentation too much. I find that user research is the most helpful for me because I can see when someone is confused very easily, even if I don't know what to do to fix it. Whereas when I produce something, I'm like, oh, this makes sense because of all the assumptions I'm making. It's like what you said about thinking logically or programmatically ahead of time. So at least I can catch myself there. But then I find myself struggling with, okay, now what? So anyway,
yeah,
I don't want to derail too much, but
but yeah, generally it's good to have that sort of sounding board of one or if at all possible, like up to 10 users that you can put some stuff in front of, ask some quite open questions like, what do you think you would do here? What would you do first?
yeah,
What do you think would be the next step? Is there anything that's unclear? Asking these types of questions is good instead of asking questions like, uh, would you enjoy this game?
yeah,
You know, that it's quite a leading question because you want them to enjoy the game. They know that you want them to enjoy the game, so they psychologically feel like saying, "Yes, I would enjoy the game," even if that's not honestly the truth.
I see, I see.
So you can you can almost get a negative effect from user interviews sometimes because they'll tell you what you want to hear, which reinforces what you thought before, which isn't actually right or takes you down the wrong path. And so these user feedback things can sometimes lead you down the wrong path. So you need to be careful with how much you read into it, I guess,
I see.
and how you ask your questions. But
Yeah.
yeah, user research is a big proponent
How
of
do
that.
how do you feel about having a user have almost total freedom, as in, hey, I'm watching you behind like a, whatever, a wall, you can't see me, just
Yeah.
use this product for 30 minutes and I'll record things and you can just think out loud. Do you find that to be good, or do you find you need to guide them at some point, or start interjecting with questions?
It really depends on what you're looking to get out of that kind of session. You know, if you have a problem in mind that you're going into the call with, like, I'm trying to think of an example. Um, like, I'm trying to figure out if people know how to use the battle system, for example.
Yeah.
You might go on a call, get them to load up the battle system, and ask them to think out loud, like basically speak their mind as they're going through it, um, which allows you an opportunity to get an insight into what they're thinking. And you can also interject with questions and stuff too. But you could also phrase that call in such a way that you could show them some static screens and say, "What do you think if you had done this button? If you, what would you think would happen if you pressed this button?"
Got it.
Then you get the response specifically to that small action. Um, the the idea of giving them it and letting them sort of go wild and be in the playground and do their own thing is good for exploring stuff um, more widely. But if you're looking to isolate details and things, that's where you probably want to control the environment a little bit and lead them down more of a focused path to get their thoughts on that path bit by bit. Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. So at some point in the future, I'm going to make some changes to the game, and I probably should do user research sessions that are focused on just some piece of what I've changed or some portion of the game.
Yeah. I
It
mean,
sounds
you
like that'd
could
be
do
easy.
like A/B testing or something like that as well. You could show them, version 1 and version 2. It's like, what one do you think's better? That type of thing. That's another method for identifying. Okay, have I improved it or not? Um, but if you're thinking about entire flows for something, um, yeah, sometimes having users go into it cold and not having any prior knowledge can be helpful. But also on the flip side, having someone go through the old process, you updating it, getting them back, going through the new process and getting their thoughts on that can also be insightful. So there's different ways you can cut and slice and organize how you do these sort of user feedback sessions. Um, and I think it's quite hard to say, in stone, like here's the thing you should do
Yeah.
for this certain thing. It's really just comes down to what do you think's the best approach to getting the feedback,
Okay. And
how
and
you're going to get the most value out of it.
one more small question. What you said makes sense. I appreciate this. Let's say, hang on one sec. Excuse me. Sorry. Let's say you have a flow that is not finalized yet, and you have a mock-up for an idea that you could do with it. Do you think generally it helps to show mock-ups first so that you don't sort of bias them with what the actual coded flow is, or does the order not matter?
Yeah, so mockups and wireframes help a lot when you don't want users to focus so much on how it looks, but
Mm-hmm.
more what the process is and steps in a flow. So like if you had a 5-step process and you wanted to find out is this the right process, you might give them wireframes with a lack of visual detail so that they don't go into it and be like, oh, but that button's red. I would prefer it if it was purple. Or I
Mm.
think this should be bigger, or I think this should go over there. You're really just getting them to focus on the process and the flow, not the how it looks and where it lives type aspect to it. So yeah, mock-ups are good for that.
Okay. All right. Yeah. I thank you for this little interlude of me asking a bunch of questions about research.
No problem. Yeah, so difficulty to be covered. And accessibility as well. So it's probably not something to think about too much in the games industry, not from what I've seen anyway, but accessibility is quite a broad topic. And when you say accessibility, people think like, screen readers and all these fancy technologies and, tabbing with your keyboard rather than using your mouse, that type of thing. But accessibility can be as simple as just like labeling things properly, having tooltips for icons so that when you hover over an icon, it says this is what it's going to do when you click on it. So accessibility is quite a big thing as well for um, like neurotypical people, able-bodied people as well. Like they get a lot of benefit out of certain aspects of accessibility. But on the broader sense of it as well, there is a big sort of push now towards being more vocal about neurodivergencies.
Mm-hmm.
And neurodivergencies is a big part of accessibility as well. So things like metaphors, for example, like it's raining cats and dogs is an expression we use in the UK for when it's raining really heavily. If you were to say that to someone with autism, they would not have a clue what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Like they might be from the country, but because it's a metaphor and they think quite literally, it doesn't make any sense to them. So avoiding metaphors can be, a good thing to bear in mind as well when it comes to explaining instructions and tasks and stuff as well.
I see.
Um,
So let's say, okay, in a game where you want there to be personality, where maybe there's humor or something that plays on tropes, would you take that into account as much, or would you just say, look, 10% of people aren't going to understand this, and that's fine because the humor impact on the 90% who do it's going to more than outweigh the cost? You know what?
Yeah, it's an interesting point because it's something we were having a conversation about in my own work is to like how do you inject personality into your product, but not to the detriment of people with autism or anything like that. So I can't really say for sure. Games have more creative license around
Mm-hmm.
these sorts of things, so you probably get away with a lot more, specifically in games. Um, but yeah, in web apps and stuff like that, and products and services, it's a little bit trickier, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can probably get away with more in games, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Yeah. And then that brings us to the UI part of UI UX. Obviously, the user interface. So it's the interface or interfaces that the user interacts with. These can be both large scale or small scale. So again, just getting you to think about the UI can be the whole thing, or it can be a small little component of the whole thing as well, depending on the tasks that people are doing. So that can be the entire screen, the entire window, or it can be a drop down or a menu or a card or a panel or something. In terms of UI design as well, so you've got like the artistic style. So obviously with your game, it's more like pixel art and sort of bright colors, sort of fantasy type of vibes. But how does the UI fit in with that theme of your game? And the design of that can sort of make or break the game, right? If it feels totally disjointed from the rest of the game and it's not consistent, it just leaves you with that impression of like lack of polish, that type
Yeah.
of thing. So, if your game was a medieval game, you might look at, textured wood, iron, leather, ribbons, a gothic serif font, tie in with that theme. If it was more of a futuristic game, it would be like, smooth brushed metal, neon LED lighting, modern sans serif fonts, etc. So that's more on the design side. And, if your background isn't in design, that stuff's not going to come natural to you. But again, just something to think about and maybe look to your artist to think about how might we introduce some of these textures and feelings to the UI. In game design, you tend to find like big buttons and stuff are made of wood or leather, or they look like pressed iron or metal. These types of things are really good for introducing that theme to the rest of your UI. And how you style panels and things too. So does the panel have a big border around it that's covered in ribbon? Do message boxes appear on ribbons, or just random examples, right? But how you think about these things can tie in the entire UI to the rest of the game.
Yeah. I want to say, the way you're teaching this, I think, is very good. And it's because it makes sense to me. And then I go off on my own and I'm like, I'm just going to violate every single UI and UX principle that I've ever heard. So if I could just have your voice there somehow over my shoulder as I'm doing these things. Anyway, I feel like that is actually one of my struggles, is how do I keep this stuff in mind? When you were starting, at the very beginning of your career in this, do you remember the struggles you had? Do you remember how you sort of got over that and ended up keeping these in mind? Is it just experience? Is there some like trick you use?
Yeah, a lot of it is just when you start off, you've got like a blank canvas, you've got complete creative license to do whatever you want. So you can create whatever you want as badly as you want to do it. It's not until later on that you look at it and you learn a lot of techniques and skills. A lot of what I know now is just through repetition and experience. I couldn't tell you, go read a book and you'll know UI design. You need to kind of put it into practice,
Yeah.
see how it translates from what your initial concept in a wireframe or a screen design was to the product. And so a lot of the time as well, my job, like I'll design something on a static screen, hand it over to the developer, and then when I see it in practice and start interacting with it and clicking through it and seeing the animations and work, I'll take a step back and think, no, that's not how it should be. We need to change it. We need to take a step back. We need to add more animation or take animation away or change something in style because it doesn't fit. So yeah, a lot of it's learned experience. A lot of it's mindset as well. Like with development work specifically, I felt like I reached a level where I could know enough around HTML and CSS because it related so much to design. But when it comes to like back end stuff and logic, I don't think my brain's wired that way because I just get really super bored. And I know there's developers that get bored trying to think of how to design a web page. So I think a lot of it's just mindset and so how you're wired in your brain. You'll either enjoy it or you won't. If you don't enjoy it, you're probably not going to get that good at it because you need to enjoy it to get good at it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, and I don't want to go too deep into my response to this, but I think a lot of it is I get the opportunities to practice, but I can't do it quickly, I feel. So then I iterate for some time and I don't come up with something that's perfect. And I'm like, okay, I did learn from this, but then when's the next time I'm going to try applying this? So at some point, I feel like I need to sit down, and we're starting it with this session even, and look at what do my buttons look like? What are the fonts? What's the texture of the background, like you mentioned? What's the consistent theme I'm going for here? and hopefully it's in the right direction, because otherwise I feel like it's like what you said about how you have a static screen. When the developers finally develop it, they've put more cost into it. By the time I finally look at what I'm doing and get feedback saying, hey, this isn't great, the cost is like massive. So I need to find, I guess that's where doing user research based on wireframes and mockups can really help, because I guess it gives you an idea before you've put the energy into developing it.
Yeah, before you commit to the time and the expense of building it and polishing it completely, you can understand, is the flow right to begin with before you
Yeah.
start looking at how things look more cosmetically. That thing you mentioned as well about you spend a lot of time on it and it maybe doesn't look the way that you want. Some of that just comes down to knowledge of the design tools themselves. So like, are you able to translate something you've seen in a reference to your own design? That a lot of that just comes down to knowing how to use Figma or Photoshop or something like
Yeah.
that. And the techniques that people use to replicate textures and styles and all that sort of stuff. That is more sort of hard skills in the tools themselves, and that gets quicker. Like that whole process gets quicker the more familiar with the design tools you get.
Yeah.
But if you're not in them every day, then you forget things, or the tools change so quickly that the way you done it before no longer is there. So yeah, a lot of that will just come down to getting hands-on practice with the tools on a more regular basis and
Okay.
understanding how things work.
Sounds good. I don't say this jokingly. It does sound like one big conclusion from this is I do need to practice quite a lot more to get this stuff into my mind, make it be part of each little process I'm doing. And that way it's a consideration earlier on and not, right at the end when I'm scrambling to make things look good.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's kind of reflective of my experience when I first started off, because I started off doing like graphic design. So I was taking like stock photos and cutting them out in Photoshop using the pen tool and sticking them onto backgrounds and using layers and blending to blend everything in. And I thought that looked the business at the time. But then you look back on it now, you're like, oh, the techniques I was using were poor. Like the method for cutting out was poor because you can see it. All of that just comes down to knowledge of the tools at the end of the day as well, and techniques and how to do it. YouTube's a big help for stuff like that. Like if you want to know how to do something specifically in Photoshop or in Figma, just googling it or YouTubing it would help quite a bit with that.
Gotcha.
Rather than
Yeah.
struggle through yourself trying to figure out where a certain tool is or how you might do something. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah. By the way, if you ever, I'm pretty sure you said you can't see my camera, but if I'm ever looking away, I'm taking notes on all this stuff so that I can follow up on this later.
Yeah, the other thing as well to think about is sort of context focus. So do I have the right tools available for the specific job to be done? So like thinking about a battle system or a battle environment as an example. I think I've actually got that here, yeah. So you might think of them as like different modes or different screens or different panels or different areas of the UI. So specifically in the context of your game, you've got this concept of like a world map or the full map, but you've got other things that you can do. You can do battles, you can build a party, you can open up the shop and see how your shop's doing, that type of thing. Typically, you probably don't want all the various controls that you can do within those things available on the screen at one time. So thinking about the context of what is the tools that I need to do the job that I'm doing right now, try and think about it that way. The information architecture document I got you to put together, which we can come back to, because I've got a little fig jam board that sort of breaks down those bullet points you had. Doing that bullet pointed list of here's the battle system and all the available functions within it. Doing that exercise lets you think about, okay, what's the most important things to that job to be done and when does it need to be made available. So with a battle system, for example, you've got the start battle button, which is already a good start, right? Because you don't have all the controls around battles available on the screen. You've just got that start battle button, and then you get into the battle screen. So that's a good way of thinking about the context. So really what I'm saying here is thinking about what options, controls, functions do I need, and when do I need them. Don't make them available when you don't need them, basically.
Got it.
Is what I'm trying to say there.
So let me ask you something here too. Let's say something is not always needed, but you want people who are more familiar to be able to get to some stage more quickly, such that okay, you shouldn't typically go from like stage A to B to C, but some user wants to jump from A to C. How would you work with that? Would you add in hotkeys or have some option to show an advanced setting? Like, how do you
Yeah.
accommodate your different stages of users as they use your product?
Yeah, so you're talking about, like first time users versus power users or
Yeah.
experienced users, right? Um, it depends on what you're talking about. I guess in the web app space, things like hotkeys are really good for power users and experienced users. Um, Generally speaking, you want to make things as simple and universally accessible as possible.
Hmm.
And then think about the first time people and the experienced people as like two separate groups that you could maybe add some additional stuff around. So a first time user might need tooltips or a tour or a guide or arrows or reminders or things to help them like in their job along the way. The regular user doesn't need that anymore. They've already been shown where things are, so they have everything that's available to them. As long as they have all the controls they need there at one for all the basic stuff, then they're sorted. But your power users might want to skip a step or open a menu without having to click a button or, that sort of thing. Hotkeys are a good way to do that, or a combination of hotkeys. I'm not really sure specifically around games. This is where my lack of experience in games is probably a little bit lacking in terms of how you, or what are some of the techniques that you use to help those power
Well,
users.
so you
Maybe
kind of
I'll
mentioned this yourself when you said you might show arrows to new users. I'm thinking about it in the context of games. There are a lot of games that say something like, skip tutorial or turn off tutorial or something. And that way, yes, you just dive right in, or stop showing me tips and you just see them on loading screens or something. So
Yeah,
yeah, I can make sense of this in the game world based on what you're saying. Yeah.
yeah. Or there might even be information that you don't need to display to the common user, like, damage dealt on that specific attack. Like, I'm thinking just very high level here, right? But if you don't want the detail, the more stuff you add to the UI, the busier it gets,
Hmm.
which can get confusing for people, right? But if you're a geek and you want to know how much damage you dealt so you can optimize and tweak little bits and pieces here and there, having damage stats available for you is really good, but for the average users, maybe not as useful or meaningful without cluttering the rest of the UI.
Yeah.
So I've seen in games before, it's like, turn certain damage stats on or off, like mana cost used, turn that off, damage dealt, turn that off, that type of thing. Thinking specifically about League of Legends, because I play that the most, I know they've got like checkbox controls over damage dealt, damage blocked, mana used, crit damage, all that sort of stuff. Because when you see it popping up on the screen, it's good to know as like an experienced user how much damage you're dealing. But as the everyday user or someone else that's new, having a lot of stuff going on the screen at one time can actually overwhelm you and become confusing. Which, going back to the, am I feeling overwhelmed? Am I confused? That type of thing.
I
That
see.
plays
I
into
see.
that
Yeah.
as well.
So you don't necessarily see a problem with putting some of this behind some game settings of,
Yeah,
okay, show this stuff or don't show this stuff, and maybe steering a little bit more toward a cleaner UI for new people and allowing them to then turn it on later. Um,
yeah,
Part of what I was thinking too, specifically about Skeleseller, is not showing certain features at the beginning and making a user unlock them, which in a game sort of makes sense. Like, okay, you don't start with the ability to have a party even because you just don't even
mm,
have the adventurers for it. So you slowly get that. And I think that's another way I was planning on having it slowly introduce some of these things such that when we're finally showing you the auto repeat battle checkbox, that you're like, oh, I know what this does because I just unlocked it.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Exactly. Yeah, you can break down the first, couple of iterations of a task so that they get familiar with that task, like the battle system, for example, and then give them the auto battle option. Explain what it does and give them that option,
Yeah.
and then they can check that on and forget about it because they've learned that part of the game. Let's go learn another part or another mechanism or mechanic.
Got it. Got it.
Um,
Got it. Got it.
yeah, for sure. But I think that area around how much detail you show on a screen as well again comes back to that idea of developers think logically. So they think, if I'm dealing damage, you're going to want to show the damage, right? But that's quite a geeky thing, and it's quite something very detail orientated that the average user might not necessarily want. Which, when you come back to asking your average user, like your user persona, like what do they want, what do they like, that's where you should start to find out that sort of information. Like, oh, I don't like stuff, how much text is on the screen, or I don't like where this is taking me, or I didn't know what to do here, or these types of things. So those will
Yeah.
become clear with user feedback.
Yeah. Yeah. This is really good. And I know you well enough now, but if I didn't know you, I'd be like, he played the game and hated it. And he was like, why is there all this stuff on the screen? What is he thinking? Like I said, we worked together before, and I know what you're suggesting is good. I should definitely consider this, and I want to get back to the game at some point and think, what is important, what does the average person want, and maybe these are good questions as I do user research. Right now it's sort of limited. I do maybe like an hour or two per checkpoint, and toward the end, toward launch, I'm going to probably do more and more of that and ask people, would you have wanted to see how much damage you do? How would you expect to be able to do that? And yeah, just kind of record their answers and see where they go. So yeah, so thank you. I'm glad you are taking into account the specifics of the game itself.
Yeah, but some of that as well though is you need to be careful about who you're asking, right? Because if you have a target demographic in mind of the casual gamer that likes a chilled game, that say that was your user persona, right, with more detail around it, but you were to put the game in front of someone that is more competitive, they like action, they like challenge, they like loads of stuff going on, they like mechanical ability, all that sort of stuff. You're asking the wrong type of person what they think of the game. So if that was your persona, then you're asking the wrong person. So you need to be careful about who you're asking and making sure that you're asking the right people, the right questions as well.
Yeah.
There's a little helpful thing at the end of the presentation as well around player types. Like what different people like from different games, which might help a little bit. And sometimes having that persona and going through that somewhat laborious task of creating an imaginary person that would play your game, it helps bring your focus back all the time and ask the right questions. You try and put yourself in their shoes to a certain extent rather than thinking about it from your own point of view.
Yeah.
That
Gotcha.
can be really helpful.
Yeah. Also, I will say this. I've had some experience in the corporate world seeing this stuff play out. We did have to make personas. We had to think about this. Those are for
Yeah.
corporate products though, and it was a little bit different. Although I
Yeah.
recognize that tool can be helpful. And then I think at one point I tried for Botland, and I feel like I was doing it wrong. I feel like I needed to find users who then matched those personas to feel like, is the persona even correct? Are there people
Mhm.
out there like this? Am I getting enough feedback from enough of those people to know that this is a common need from them? So yeah, I'll have to think about that with Skeleseller.
Yeah, and creating a persona is a little bit of a science as well, and it's not a perfect art. You don't create a persona one night randomly and say, okay, that's my person, let's go find them. Personas are like a living, breathing documentation piece. They can
Yeah,
change as your game changes, as users' needs change, that type of thing. So they should never always be set in stone. They're designed to be organic a little bit and change with the needs of your users to a certain extent.
got it. Sounds good.
So going back to the context focused a little bit as well. So we talked about different modes and having options available at different places as and when they're needed, not unnecessarily. Thinking as well about prioritization of the UI and what's the biggest thing that should shout on the page? Where should the user's focus be? Um, with the information architecture document you put together, you've listed some things around a battle system, the town, all that kind of thing. What you really want to do is think about, okay, what's the prioritization of that sort of stuff. So looking at the entire UI for the game as you land on it at first, what's the first thing you want the user to focus on? I've put together this little mock UI of like how typically a user might think, and this is just generally speaking based on a little bit of experience, right? But
Hmm.
to get you thinking about prioritization, I've got, okay, there's this big thing screaming at me in the middle of the screen with like loads of confetti going off around it. My eye is instantly drawn to that. And so it should be, right, because that's the first thing you can do in the game, which is the little signpost thing that instructs you to um, recruit a character.
Yeah,
That's fine. So that's vision point number one. That's where your eyes go. Where else on the UI do you want them to go next, and what's the prioritization of all this stuff? You don't want everything competing for attention on the page at one time. You want to sort of reduce certain things and bring things more to the forefront. There's different ways you can do that. There's size, there's location, there's animation, there's color, there's loads of different techniques you can use to draw attention to things. But to think about the UI in terms of at any given point when you're looking at a screen, what's the primary focus? What's the secondary thing? What's the third thing? What's the fourth thing? What's the fifth? This is a very quick mock of like a mix of like your game and a generic game UI.
hmm,
So you get a signpost in the middle, the world map, all that sort of stuff going on. Number 2 is fight, because that's maybe like the primary action you want people to do once they've created their character. It's like let's fight. Third to that, you've then got your shop, because after you've completed a fight, you get items, you can now then sell them. So okay, let's go to the shop. So that's slightly less big, it's slightly lighter colour, it's not as bold on the page, so that's number 3. Number 4 is then more sort of like your good to know information, so like what's your player health, what's your player mana, that type of thing. That's up the top, sort of out the way, it's there, it's visible, it's centred, but it's not the primary focus. And then number 5 is like your game menu type stuff, so click here to find settings and quit the game and save your game and all that sort of thing. So all that to bring us back to the point of, think about your UI and what's on the screen and try and identify what the priorities should be, and make sure that when you see the screen, you feel like your number one priority, you are actually drawing your eye to that first, and it's not something else that's screaming over here.
Got it. Yeah, like I said, this is a perfect example of what you're saying makes 100% sense. And then I'm like,
It's quite hard.
I just flip my whole keyboard over and I'm like, I'm not going to do any of this. So I read a book called Refactoring UI. Are you familiar with that by any chance?
Yeah, the guys that made Tailwind,
Yeah, exactly. And it was great. And it talked about a lot of this stuff. And hearing you reinforce it, I think it's like, yeah, obviously you can use color to make something stand out more or not. And I think I need to take some dedicated time and look at what you just said. At the end of the day, you show someone the screen, what is attracting your attention? Okay, it's the glowing signpost. Awesome. But then what's the second thing? And it's like, oh, well, in the game right now, you see this menu at the upper left, and that really shouldn't be there. That's in the process of changing. But yeah, that does attract your attention. It's at the upper left, and you read from top to bottom, left to right. So you'll probably see it. And that's probably distracting users right now.
Mm-hmm. It's sometimes good as well to think about, categorize the actions a little bit. So like, what are the things on the page that require action, like a button click, versus what's the information or the good to know stuff. So like health bars, it's just always there. You don't need to click on it to do anything, but it's auxiliary information that you need to have there. But making sure that's sort of like lower on the prioritization than the big actions you want people to take, is generally what I would advise around that.
Got it. Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, then I wanted to sort of like do a quick transition at FigJam. I think you're sharing your screen, right?
Yeah, I am. Yeah.
Or you're sharing my screen, right? Okay, cool. So hopefully this should just pop up. Can you see that?
I still see smooth transition to FigJam. You might be sharing just Chrome right now.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah. Let me just change it around then. Screen 1. There we go.
Okay, now I can see your taskbar. Yeah, so yes, I can see FigJam. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So as I said before, you obviously sent me that sort of information hierarchy list of here's some things I was thinking. So you've got your title screen, you've thought about what actions you're going to have on your title screen and maybe some actions that happen after that. So for example, on your title screen, you have a new game option. When you click on that, it takes you to an intro cutscene. Great, good to know. You've got sort of like order and priority and that sort of thing and what happens there. That's all good. The main game itself, though, is the interesting part because you've got this concept of like a town or a world map thing going on, but then you've also got these sort of like subsystems going on at the same time. So like battles and actions you need to take, your player menus, your party menus, all that sort of stuff. I know in the build that you sent me, you still had the battles happening sort of like at the bottom of the page, taking up like the lower third of the page, and they sort of stack in 4 in a row. But I think in the one I seen earlier on, you had it like on the world map now. Is that right?
So okay, originally there was some dedicated screen space and it was just blank otherwise, which was I think a little jarring. And yes, now they overlay on top of the world.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. So that was interesting because what I was taking from that is it's very busy on the page, right? So this is probably a quick wireframe example of what you got. So this light area here is like your world map with everything going on, and you've got your battles sort of stacked along the bottom. The battle arenas themselves are very similar to the world map because they use the same like coloured assets. So visually, there's a lot of the same colour and assets and stuff going on in the same space, and they all sort of like blend together. But the battles have loads of things going on themselves as well. You've got like arrows flying in battle one. You've got arrows flying the other direction in battle two. You've got damage stats popping up in all three. There's health bars moving. There's lots of stuff to keep track of. So that was just one of the things I noticed that was quite tough for me visually. Was it all sort of blends together into one UI, but there's lots of little detailed things going on all around the place as well as the world map as well. Something to think of, I think, around that space. Like if there's actions to take in a battle, maybe they should have a way to, okay, let's just focus in on one battle at a time. And maybe you give users options to do that, like maximize one battle, just focus on that. I know the battling thing isn't like the main, it's not like the main focus a lot of the time. So it's maybe something to think about around how would you manage loads of battles going on. Do you need to see the battles happening all the time? Or is that something you can sort of opt into? Maybe quite helpful if you had like a minimized version of a battle rather than seeing the full battle arena and the characters and the health bars. Maybe you have like a minimized version of that where you just see just your health bars and some text updates on like what's happening. You know, there's less stuff going on visually. You're taking up less of the screen with the battle stuff. And it allows people to look at that information if they're interested in it. But if they're interacting with the world map and they're recruiting recruiting characters and building parties and stuff, there's plenty of space to do that. So just something to think about
Yeah,
around that.
yeah.
I thought for sure. Um, yeah, and then some things like within a battle, there's a fight going on. You can also have a cancel auto battle button after the battle. There's a summary screen. Okay, these summary screens are very small though, as would be the only thing. The text is very small. It's all quite small. The controls are quite small, so just be careful around that as well. Is there anything on those summary screens that you don't really need to show that you could do away with? Maybe makes things bigger. Not sure. Just things to think about.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, the menus themselves, yeah. So like the adventurer skill tree, the party menu, all that sort of stuff. I know you mentioned that already. They're up in the top left. You'll want to redo all that sort of stuff. So I would just think about splitting that into logical groupings. So you've got all your player um, information in one sort of UI. You've got your party stuff and maybe in another one. You might want to have some sort of full screen thing for an adventurer skill tree so that you can explore that in more detail and it's not just like clicking buttons and things. Again, just some things to think about, not necessarily direction in terms of what I think you should do.
Yeah.
But you want to make sure that these functions, these groups are together in sort of one UI, and that if they are in one UI, do think to yourself, do they need focus? Like, should there be other things going on around while this UI is in focus? Or can I push everything else to the side and have that one UI there, dismiss it and bring everything back in, that type of thing. I thought it was just a nice observation as well.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and then in terms of like dialogues and things, so thinking about the world itself, you've got signposts, you've got NPCs, you've got quests to pick up, you've got other characters moving around, you've got potions on the map, all that sort of thing. If you've got, again, going back to the battle screen, if you've got the battles going on at the bottom of the screen and all this other stuff going on in the world map at the same time, it's a lot to like visually process at one time. So maybe think about how you could minimize or have options to toggle things on or off, for people that don't like too much going on. And then in terms of like NPC dialogues as well, it's like introduce story, introduce character chat. Maybe here's what I want and have big item icons and stuff so that you can see visually what it is I need to get, and then differentiate your primary buttons to your secondary buttons. So make sure the accept quest button is like the biggest, brightest thing there, and the maybe later or the cancel button is not quite as prominent. So there's clear distinction between primary action or secondary action as well. And these dialogues as well could like float around the map on top of these screens. So yeah, again, this was just like late night ramblings I had last night when I was looking at
No,
it.
this is good.
So,
there. Okay, so my very first question for all of this is actually a meta question about this. It's been about an hour. I do not want to keep you for longer than you want. I know you said you were tired to begin with, and also I don't know if you want to take a break or something. So that's the first thing, which is how much longer do you want to go for here, so that I don't, exploit your
time. To go as long as you are.
Okay. Then how about this? I have some questions and that I'd already come up with beforehand and some kind of questions based on what you've said.
Yeah.
So how about this? Let's focus on the battle windows.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what my thinking was, which does not necessarily factor into the UX because maybe this is bad thinking. But I thought if you could ignore battles, that you might ignore them and only focus on, items popping out of this portal and fueling your town, such that you just sort of miss out on a big portion of the game. But I guess
Mhm.
that's up to the player. So if you could, that was my fear of if you could minimize battles. But I see what you're saying, which is you don't need to minimize them to nothing. You could minimize them to just health bars showing, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
Um, what are your thoughts on just that? Given that I had this fear that people might just skip over battles and just click an auto repeat button and never touch it again.
Yeah, well, that's kind of, to be honest, that's where my instincts went when I first started playing it. I haven't really seen much of it other than some things I've seen on stream. But as a brand new user that wasn't too sure about what to do with the game, um, the battle started and I clicked the auto battle thing, you know. And as much as I could see the battles generating money, I'm like, okay, how do I get more money? Just leave that to run.
Yeah,
There's not really anything to do while I wait for my money to come in.
yeah,
And then it's like, okay, what's the next thing to do? And if I'm away doing the next thing, I'm not paying attention to the battle anymore. I'm just making sure that my battles are bringing me in money. So, thing I would look to dig into a little bit, maybe with users, is you're putting a lot of detail into stats and skills and all that sort of stuff. How do you make that matter when the end result is you either won the battle or you didn't? If you win the battle, then there's nothing to be learned really.
yeah.
There's no skill, there's no change to be made. If you lost the battle, that's where you're like, okay, why did I lose the battle, and what can I do to improve or change, um, that type of thing.
Gotcha.
Otherwise, you could just leave your adventurers at level one, leave the auto battle thing running, just keep bringing money in, and then if that's all there is to it, the purpose of the game then just becomes making sure that you can build a party and what else can you do other than battling really,
Yeah, yeah,
because that's happening in the background.
yeah.
So where does the rest of the user action live?
Got it. Got it. Excuse me. Okay, so that's good. Uh, I want to think about that more. This is not something I could think I can just answer right now, but that
Yeah,
has
yeah,
been a struggle in the past about this of this is a like largely idle game. And
yeah,
I think that for people who are maybe not used to idle games, it's jarring to be like, what am I clicking? What am I doing? And
yeah.
I think it could work if I've set expectations correctly. So I probably need to maybe ease people's way into that.
Like, I think that's just generally a problem with like early development is you can't. It's hard to ease users in or introduce users to the game because you could set up a tutorial or a tour of here's what to do and here's how the game works, but the game changes that frequently that that tour and guide quickly becomes out of date.
Yeah.
So a little bit chicken and egg. It's like you could design the game to its fullest and then introduce people to it, or you could introduce people to it and design around the game. Um, Obviously at the early stage the game's at, if you're just to drop it on someone's computer and say, "What do you think?" you might find the same problems, right? Again, this maybe comes back to like what is the type of gamer you're looking for? Maybe I'm just not an idle game type of person, so that's fine. And again, that comes back to do you want to take my advice if I'm not your sort of typical audience?
Yeah.
Um,
And that's what's tough because this is what I constantly grappled with Botland, which is here's a game that most people have never played something even like it, where you're automating bots fighting in battles. So how do you know you found someone who likes this? Because you can't point to like, well, hey, I'm making a racing game. Do you like Mario Kart? If you say yes, it's like, well, you'll probably like this game.
mm,
With this, it's like I guess it's close enough to an idle game that might exist where I could find people who like that and see if this appeals to them. And that's part of what I'm trying to do, at least with these checkpoints and surveys. But then there's the user experience side of things. So I need to consider this some more. I like the idea you said about maybe you could minimize battles to just see health bars. It could be kind of interesting if we consolidated the entire battlefield to just here are your characters, here are the enemy characters in like a very tiny part of the UI. You're really just watching health bars, or maybe it's just even like an average health bar of both parties or something. And
yeah,
um, so I'll have to experiment with that sort of thing.
yeah, that comes back to, what do you need to know and when to do the job that you need to do. If you're displaying all the battles on screen, like say you had a full grid on the screen of all the battles happening, do you need to know what's happening in every battle all the time? Or can you just show stuff when you need to show it? When something goes wrong or when something goes right,
Yeah.
type of thing.
Yeah. Okay. I'll try to keep that in mind. Let me see this. So the next thing, oh, here was kind of a very specific thing. So when you get certain items in the game, the NPCs can offer you quests. And right now there's like an exclamation mark that kind of wiggles above the character. And the very first one that you see in the world, you can't really move the camera, so it's very obvious. And then in the future, you could zoom out, you can pan around. How should I make it clearer that an NPC has a quest for you?
So when I was playing it, what I was expecting is that if anything like that had changed on the map, that
Mhm.
it would pan me to that section and have some sort of like arrow or indicator to say something's new here. So if something's happening in real time and all of a sudden I've got a quest, either pan me to that area on the map of the world map in real time and show me there's a quest, or have some sort of like updates or events sort of panel that tells you things that are going on in the world or happening in the world at one time, or even have like a dedicated quests UI that new quests go into there automatically and you get like a little Facebook notification red mark against them or something like that. Might be a good way to notify people that stuff's happening.
I'm smiling because you proposed uh, pretty much all of the things that other people have suggested within like 5 seconds of thinking about it. And I think if I were to try to come up with this stuff myself, it would have taken longer. So yeah, I based on what you said, it makes me think that at least one of those is a good idea that I should probably pursue. It shows like a Facebook notification.
I think
Okay.
a big thing around the design part is really isolating what your references are. You probably want some references to other types of games to figure out, because they're going to have these same challenges, and you want to sort of figure out how did they solve these same challenges. Like, what was their solution to the quest's problem, and how did they deal it? And come up with a handful of different references that you can point to and say, okay, they did it this way, they did it this way. Is there any particular system that works best for my game? Do I like part of, competitor one and part of competitor two? Can I blend them together? These types of things is probably a good way to go about it, rather than trying to think, okay, I need to find a way to generate user attention on quests, and
Yeah.
just thinking in your own bubble, in your own box, and coming up with the first idea that comes to your head. You want to draw in some references and some inspiration.
I see. Yeah. Yeah. And that's something that I've struggled with in the past because I feel like philosophically I'm like, this is a game I'm creating. I don't want it to be too similar to something else. And at the same time, you know, long story short, my wife was just telling me about a conversation she had yesterday where people were saying there's like a book writing contest or something like that. And they just said that they're going to allow AI books to be published as part of this contest. And that caused a ton of controversy. And someone posed the idea that like, well, hey, isn't that sort of the controversy was around like, well, maybe you're plagiarizing other books if you're doing this. And someone said, the human brain is sort of similar, and that you're taking in all these other books you've read and without knowing it, somehow copying some of these ideas. And I don't want to generate this whole thing, but anyway, I think of it sort of the same way. It's like you as a strong person in UI and UX, you've seen so many products, you've absorbed all of this, and now you know how to apply that to a new product. So it's not really like you're copying that product any more than if you woke up in the middle of the night and said, I have a great idea for a game, and just started making a game.
Yeah. To a
Yeah.
certain extent, there are no original ideas anymore when it comes to these sorts of things. And
Yeah.
to be honest, coming back to like, how did I learn? A lot of what I learned, especially in Photoshop and graphic design, was copying existing art. So it's like, I would see someone's graphic and be like, oh, how would I recreate that? Go into the application and try and recreate it. Do it badly enough, but you'll learn a lot along the way. And if you copy enough examples of something, you're then able to come back to it later and reference it and say, okay, that's a good solution to this problem. That's
Yeah.
a good solution to this problem. And a lot of problems have already been solved. It's just about finding the right references. And it's not to say that you copy something like for like. You
Oh
just
yeah.
take
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
the bare mechanics of it, and you could stylize it your own way. You could make it, appear in a better way, that type of thing. So
Got it. Yep. Okay. All right. I will try to actually internalize this for the future. Let me see. Okay, the last kind of more specific thing I wanted to ask here was skill trees. So I hear what you said earlier about what should be the focus of your action at a given time. Right now, you can pop up a skill tree while everything else is going on in the already busy game. So possibly we should have that be something maybe full screen. Maybe it even pauses the game as you're in there. Um, these trees are not the very expansive trees that you might have seen in other games. They're really just the maybe 4 things you can influence at that time. So let's say that I decide to make it sort of pause the game. Do you think I should use the whole screen real estate? Should I like what's your sort of gut feeling about how skill trees should work in the game? Maybe I shouldn't be trying to steer this too much.
No, it depends, I guess, on how big the actual UI needs to be. Like, if, say, for example, I'm trying to think of a reference that's going back to references. I remember in Final Fantasy X, they had like this node-based system where it was like a massive grid, and if you learned one skill, it opened up path A or path B to the next thing, and so it was this massive sort of bigger than the screen type grid type thing.
Mm-hmm.
That warrants having the entire screen, right? But on your end of the scale, if you've got 5 options that you can pick from and you can level them up to 5 different options, then just have those 5 options as big as they need to be on the screen, and that'll dictate then how big the rest of the UI needs to be to accommodate it. And then you could just backfill the rest of it. So like a modal window might be a kind of example, which is basically just a pop-up that the UI is as big as it needs to be. The rest of the background is just sort of overlaid with a semi-transparent background color, or there's shadows on top of it, or the game is just paused in the background. As long as there's enough visual distinction between the UI that you're focused on, what's in the foreground, and what's in the background, generally you should be okay. There's no point in making it the full screen and covering up the world map and all that if
Yeah.
your UI and your buttons are like 40 pixels wide or something on the screen, because that's just a lot of wasted real estate around it. But at the same time, you want to not be too distracting, so you kind of want to cut out some of the background noise, but maybe not all of it.
I see. Okay. One other very specific question now. So in the skill trees, you can left click to add a skill point and right click to remove one. And it's not very obvious that you can right click to remove one. So I was thinking this is one of those like the simple stupid way of fixing this is just literally say you can right click to remove points, but I could just recreate a widget such that there's a minus button, then the skill, and then a plus button, and now it's obvious that you can do this. What do you recommend for making it clear that you can remove skill points at will?
Yeah, so this goes back to what we're talking about around the UI, the large and the small, right? So you've got your large interface, the entire screen, windows, and then the small interfaces, so like your drop downs, your menus, your skill tree points. I think what you've suggested is fine, like in terms of plus minus. Again, look at some other references and see what other people are doing. A lot of UI UX design is trying not to break the mold too much. Like you don't want to have to make the user learn a new user interface paradigm because you think it's so cool. So if other game references use plus minus controls or sliders or whatever it happens to be, then just use that same component style and just style it the way you want to style it.
Okay.
I think the option you have though, plus minus, makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So I don't want to. I have a bunch of other questions, but I feel like they're in the nitty gritty of things that I already have other things to think about. So, for example, I designed the battle windows as being like a carousel, but there just aren't the UI controls for it. But it sounds like that's almost orthogonal to what I probably should be thinking about, which is just, do players always want 3 battles on the screen at once? Should there be some way of, I don't know, making them bigger or smaller or focusing on one or full screening one? Yeah. So I'll try to absorb some of that. I want to thank you very much because you certainly didn't have to do this and prepare a presentation and listen through my, probably UX 101 questions to you, but you did. So thank you.
No, not at all. I love it. I love sharing knowledge and stuff like that. And I think a lot of people overcomplicate a lot of stuff as well. So I kind of like to break things down and have little simple pictures to explain things. There are a couple of other slides at the end here. I'll send you the link to it, and you can share it with guys if you want. There's a few reference materials here that I used. I use in my job daily that I've used in the past, and also some stuff more specifically around game design that I found while researching this a little bit. The home laws of UX is just generally a good sort of Bible around UX. It's got all these laws and terms that you've maybe heard before, like chunking, Fitts law, Hicks law, and these all just relate to how UIs are constructed and why you put things in certain places. That's very helpful. Game design, or this website, Deliberate Game Design, had a lot of good UX research stuff. So if you wanted to find a template for creating a user persona, or find out how they've created a persona based on a player of a game, they have some good references there too. They also have some good. There's a thing here. This is a user experience journey for Minecraft, and it goes through the specific task of getting certain items to build another item. And so they break down the stage of each thing the user has to do to get to that and how they feel each stage in it. So that's quite interesting. You can look at that in your spare time if you're interested.
Yeah.
And then this is the sort of Venn diagram type thing of different types of players, what people enjoy in a game. So you've got like killers, you've got achievers, you've got socializers, explorers, categories for different games, I guess. And then some sort of subcategories of that, like achievers, combat, PvE, crafting, survival meters, pets, open world, journeys, crafting again, player drop in. There's social aspects to games like MMOs that people enjoy more than other things. So again, that's a good resource to think about, trying to figure out where your player base lies and what they might enjoy as well. And the links to all that stuff's in there too.
Okay. Yeah. Do you mind sharing this presentation with like the world essentially, as in someone just needs a link and they can, okay. Yeah. Cause that way I can, this is going to be a VOD on YouTube, and I'll probably throw the link into there so that people could see what it is you were presenting for this. Yeah, this is really good. I want to apply some of what we've talked about, which I don't know when that'll happen, maybe a month, maybe 2 months, something like that. And then I'd like to maybe do a follow-up session and just say like, okay, your gut feeling, you played it, what's still confusing, what seems like something you wouldn't do or you would change, and not necessarily how would you change it, just like what are the things that are red flags to you, and then maybe we have another discussion like this. Are you open to that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. I really shouldn't have put you on the spot and ask you in front of the people who would definitely want to see that. Well, thank you again for doing this. I hope you get some sleep. Hope you have a good evening, rest of your night here. And yeah. And oh, by the way, any links you'd want to share, anything? Can we, I don't want this to just be about me. Do you want to, I don't know.
Good.
Okay.
I think you've got a command already that's got my Twitter and stuff on it. You can DM me on Twitch. I'm on Twitter. I've got a website as well. It's got like a form and an email address on it. I think it's also linked to in your.
Yeah. Okay. I've got your site and the and your Twitter account there, and I just made sure they were in chat. All right. Well, thank you very much. Have a good rest of your night. Take care.
Easy.
Yep. Bye. See ya. All right. That was amazing. Thank you for joining, Funky Monkey. Your usual claps. I did not read chat during that time, as I'm sure people realize, although I did see a note about the audio being misleveled, and I apologize for not changing it sooner. It's always a little frustrating when that happens, because I recognize that if I don't get to it fast enough, then whoever watches this content later is going to be like, oh man, Adam's way too loud, and then Funky Monkey isn't loud enough, and there's no real way to fix that as a viewer. You have to fix that as the producer of the content. But yeah, I saw Sinestella's message, and I cranked it up by I think 10% or something like that. Me when Adam learns live. Think something like this would work well. Wait, have I played this game? Payday 3. I did play this game. I played it for like an hour maybe. I did not like this skill tree, to be honest. And I had a couple of issues with it, but I don't fully remember. But I think there were skills you could unlock farther down the tree, and it wasn't clear where you could put skill points in exactly to me. I want the battles to continue running so I don't lose efficiency. Yeah, this is separate from whether they're showing. We could hide the battle window and still have them be running. We could also do the minimized route and just say like battle is ongoing, you're winning or something like that. I don't know. Is learning web dev still worth it? Yeah, I think so. Out of curiosity, why would it not be? Like what's causing the doubt in that question? Oh, transparent background and having the buttons above it. Yeah. I think something like that could be fine. I think it's sort of like we have the, let me launch this. We have the game menu like this. I think if this were just the skill tree, I think this would work pretty well. I don't even think we need to pause the game for this. I think it would clearly delineate what you need to look at. It's what fnkymnky was talking about with player attention. I think if this is just the skill tree, it's fine. With pausing the game, like this menu, yes, I think this should pause the game. So if you look in the background, like these characters are no longer moving, and I think that's okay. But yeah, for the skill tree, I think they could still move and it'd be okay. I think Roblox is the only dev skill that's worth it. You can even add a blur to help keep focus. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think that sort of effect is good. I'm gonna write this down somewhere, which is go through my notes with fnkymnky. Oh, by the way, I don't know if fnkymnky's still here, but if you are still here, could you share a link to the presentation? Yeah, so go through my notes with fnkymnky and make changes. E.g., the skill tree should probably look sort of like the in-game menu, and that it's always centered, but it blurs or obscures the background so that you're focused on the skill tree. It doesn't need to pause the game. Oh, cool. Thank you, fnkymnky. Yeah. And I'm going to write a note, put this link. Actually, I could just go change this right now, right? Let me take a look. Yeah, here we go. I'll just put this here. fnkymnky's presentation. And then let's also get fnkymnky's links. fnkymnky's Twitter. I was just picturing, and fnkymnky is like, hey, here's my Twitter. It's WEBB Why? All right, there we go. Where's your accent from? Trying to pinpoint. Ah. Okay, there was something. Oh, yeah. Rashid had said, in terms of AI and current job market for full stack devs, front end, back end. Oh, I see what you mean. I think it's hard to say that any skill is not worth it right now in programming. And it's practically impossible to tell exactly how the industry is going to change in, let's say, 3 or 5 years. So learning web dev is not the kind of thing that necessarily takes like 10 years to do. You'll probably still learn things after 10 years, but it's not like you can't make websites earlier than that, much earlier than that. So yeah, I don't think it's something that you should worry about too much. If you were going to like a 4-year degree for web dev specifically, which I don't even know if those exist, but that might be something you might want to consider. Like if you're already going to put in the time, maybe put it into just computer science instead. Rate skeleseller.com 10 out of 10, obviously. It's the best website ever. I understand all of these terms. Thels is saying that he's on the night elf side, which is where they come from in Scotland. Then we just kind of talk about how skills are generally transferable, just in a very different context. Yeah, I was thinking more like if you were to do a boot camp specifically for web dev, I think you're going to get a very specific set of skills for that. And I think it'll just take a longer amount of time. Definitely gonna watch the VOD. Yeah, so my general take is that fnkymnky certainly knows what he's doing. And I think this was a good lesson. And I think that the struggle that probably most people have is not that any of these concepts is too hard in isolation. It's that you need to have this at the top of your mind so that you're actually applying it. And then of course you need some experience on how best to apply it. But if you're not even thinking about it, you're not going to just do it. Most people, I think, would lack that skill. Yo, thank you for resubbing. Welcome back. 55 months. Actually going the self-taught route. I'm 32 and don't really have the time for university. Oh yeah, totally fine. Yeah, I was just saying if you were planning on doing that it would probably make more sense to do a sort of more general thing. Yeah, self-teaching web dev, I think, is something you could certainly do. And I think that you could try to find clients and kind of see where it goes and see if you like it. And I think you can probably validate this sort of experience within about a year. Like that's about the timeline I'd probably say. You'd spend some time learning, you'd spend some time doing, you'd spend some time maybe trying to find clients or making sites for yourself or something. Yeah. Wow, look at this. Two VIPs talking to each other. I can't understand their text though through the accents. Yeah, so anyway, I think that book that I mentioned, Refactoring UI, this was a book that was targeted at, oh, by the way, the other thing I wanted to do is, where did I write this? Do I saw this on my clipboard? No, I have the wrong thing on my clipboard. Give me a sec. I want to look through those reference links as well. Yeah, go through the reference links too. Rezo here. I'll just paste this in, whatever. This VIP only chat. Well, Z-Bobs, you sort of have a pink gem there. It's purple and slightly different. Yeah, counterfeit badge. Just pasting whatever I had on my clipboard. Oh, I knew it was something from fnkymnky. And I also know that I don't tend to copy anything dangerous on my clipboard when I'm streaming. Also, I hate to lose. Yeah, so that's my general takeaways. Is let me go back a step. Refactoring UI. This is a very quick book to read. It does cost money to buy, but a lot of the things that fnkymnky talked about are things where I'm like, oh, I have a reference point for this. It's Refactoring UI. And I took a bunch of notes on this. These are the only sets of notes I don't share because the book is so short that I feel like you don't even really need to buy the book if you just have my notes. So like I probably shouldn't share those notes. But I took them and everything kind of made sense. And it's little things like, why did they make this text bigger than the other text? Why is it the color that it is? Although I do have dark reader on. Look, the buttons are two different colors. Why do they do that? When you hover over them, it's like you can notice all of this stuff yourself, but you probably don't think about it unless this is part of your job. And it applies to every little thing that you do. It's like even here, it's like this text is white. Why is that? And for the game, what fnkymnky was saying about, where is, I don't even have, here we go. Okay. So when you get a quest, we don't have the quest item that I need here. All right. Well, anyway, when you get a quest, why does that keep happening? Characters just get stuck somewhere. That is not good. Yeah, it's happening a lot. And they all got stuck. Does that have to do with items somehow? Have to do with scrolling? I don't know what caused that to happen. Anyway, what I was going to say is there's a quest and there are two options. Yeah, like here's a good example. Like build should probably be a much more appealing button because it's the thing you should be doing. Contemplating giving up on web dev and starting cybersecurity. I mean, I don't think that would be a bad route either. It all depends on what you like. And also, I guess, why you're doing this. If it's to change careers, I think I would probably look into what do those career paths look like? And maybe even in terms of concretely, like where you live or what skills you want to have. Like, let's say, just as an example, there's job A, like make a site for a bank or something like that. And let's say it pays, X dollars. And then there's job B, which is do penetration testing for, I don't know, some big tech company, and it pays this much. And both of these are ones that are a commute away from where you live. It's like, well, which is more appealing? And how many of these sorts of job A's exist and how many job B's exist? Because, yeah, I think a lot of people just sort of, they're like, oh, this is an industry sounds good, but it might not be as good an industry where you live. It might not be, maybe you don't want to move. Maybe you don't like the amount of money it pays. It kind of falls in UI and UX. I do a carriage return with their eyes. Interesting. Pen testing, don't tell them. Doesn't this, I'm pretty sure this costs money to do, in which case, thank you. I don't know why it doesn't tell you that, though. It should say, like, this cost the person 5 bits or something. Ideally, remote work would be great. Yeah, I think that at least opens up typically a lot more jobs. Although I think the competition for them becomes higher as a result of it not mattering based on location. Well, I see a bunch of things are breaking. And that must be what's causing these problems, although I don't know what I broke. So I'll need to figure this out. Or maybe, yeah. Well, let's just copy one of these things. What is it? Git component coming from line 42 of the navigation system. Target location component. Move these here. They no longer have a component. Let's research this. Oh man, there's so much to do. Figure out this issue. $50 bits option in the channel points. Well, thank you for the 50 bits behind in the text space. That's why I'm looking at remote. I see. Yeah. Yeah, well, I wish you luck. I think, like I said, I don't think you can go wrong right now. And yet it's also really hard to know where the industry is going. So it's impossible to say that AI hasn't already taken some jobs. It has. I know some people who were content writers who then they just didn't rehire them. They didn't extend their contract because it's like, well, AI does a good enough job for whatever this company is. With programmers, I don't think it's the same way. The way I've always said is I think it's going to be more of a slow burn. It's like you as a programmer, let's say you are operating at 100 productivity points, just as an arbitrary measure. I think with AI, that might go up to like 105 productivity points. Again, just an arbitrary measure. And then I think if enough programmers have enough efficiency gain that a company won't hire quite as many. So I don't think it's going to replace any single one of them. I think it's just going to be like, well, we're getting more stuff done in a week, so let's not get as many people. And I think that's what's going to happen at first. Then who knows? 2 years from now, maybe we have a step increase of how efficient companies can be with AI. The lawyer space is crazy right now with AI. What specifically, Z-Wubs? Because I haven't heard about this. I'm not saying it's not the case. It's interesting to figure out where AI is making impact. I know years and years and years ago, people were talking about the medical professions using AI to diagnose issues, and that their accuracy rate, I guess, was sometimes higher than humans for certain cases. And that was years ago. I wonder what it's like now for some of this stuff. Can you check which throw exactly this is? It's that this Git component doesn't actually exist. Oh, you're saying which one of these few throws? Line 55. So this one. So the component doesn't exist. Yeah. The target location component doesn't exist. I just made some changes to this code, I think, which is why maybe that's what's going wrong here. For talking to a lawyer and just asking chat. Oh, really? Oh, wow. That's interesting. That's not what I thought. what's the size of my monitor? I've got it in the specs command, which has this one. I should write it as a note here. This is the monitor I share on, whose screen I share on stream. Yeah, so I don't know what the resolution is, but there's a link there and you can find it through that. Oh, size, if you're just talking about size, yeah, 28 inches, I guess. 28-inch lawyer. What I thought when you were saying the thing about lawyer space going crazy right now is, man, my mouse does this every once in a while where it just right clicks when I don't want it to. There, I have to unplug it. I thought what you were going to say is that lawyers are using it, but it's that people are using it instead of lawyers. By the way, as long as I'm writing this stuff down, where is this here? I took notes on the fnkymnky stuff, but I don't think I'm going to share these. I think they're mostly for me, and I think just having the VOD be public, I think that's good enough. $16 is really just a massive piece of a laptop. Yeah, I think you said earlier that you're going to be using it as both a laptop and like a desktop computer. I think if you were steered way more toward the desktop side, to just get 14-inch so that it's just going to be docked anyway, right? But yeah. Asking Reddit instead of a lawyer in the first place, I bet. Yeah, I wonder how reliable that advice is. Yeah. I'm trying to think, what kind of issues are people asking about? You know, it'd be great, man, I would love this, is AI for like tax-based questions in the US. Something that you can rely on. Because there are so many questions where you're not even totally sure how to formulate the question. And then you find answers and you're like, is this my situation? Do I need to do this? It'd be nice to just be able to ask it directly. Free websites for small businesses, put on my resume portfolio. I think it can't hurt to learn it. Plus, it'll probably help you at some point. Like literally yesterday, I just signed up for skeleseller.com. And this is what I put up on it, which is just information's coming soon. I mean, obviously that wasn't intended to be a professional looking website, but at some point I'm going to need to make this. And in the past, there are sites like this, you know, bot.land that I've made. And I guess Adam Learns. I'm not saying I designed or did this all on my own completely. And yeah, this and it's like, if I had to get somebody else to do this stuff, I think I probably wouldn't have even pursued those projects, or they would have taken much longer or cost more money. Do you have a race condition with the nav system? Is it trying to move an object which doesn't have a target location component yet? I'm not sure. I just changed something and it might be that, but I need to look into it. Generated completely random cases. In the case of Yo versus Z-Wubs, a monumental case in the Adam Learns stream. Yeah, without someone trying to sell me their product. Yeah. You want AI to tell you tax advice? That's not the interest of those who run the country and pushing for AI. Yeah. I'm not saying about the feasibility of it, because even if it were in the best interest, it might still not be great AI yet. But that would be fantastic. I think that's the place that I've had, how do I say this? Like the most impactful questions. I feel like messing up on your taxes or doing something wrong with a business and then doing that for like 5 years in a row could have a bigger impact than the other kinds of questions I ask. Like, you know, how do I brush my cat's teeth? I need an AI to answer that for me. I just want an AI to do that for me, actually. How would you know the response is correct? Yeah, exactly. And this is why I don't use AI for search right now, is if you don't know information and you're using AI to look it up, how do you know that the information you got is actually good? And I guess it's the same as if you were looking it up on Reddit. You'd cross-reference it with things. You'd gauge it with a certain amount of trust you have. The software has been around for years, but like whenever I use this software, it's always a question of, okay, is this an asset? Is this an asset? Is it better to do things this way versus this way? I live in this city and I, gross this much money. Do I owe taxes on that amount? That sort of thing. Where it's like, it doesn't really help with those sorts of questions. Actually, I guess a good example of this is I don't use TurboTax anymore. But back when I did, they have like forums or something that are just, there's like every possible tax question has been asked on there. And if the software did this stuff, then they wouldn't need those forums. Hey, Cdu. Hey, Scoreline. Stray from web dev to pen testing and ethical hacking. Yeah, and hopefully you don't feel overwhelmed by one or both of those things such that you can kind of do them both at once at some point. Also found Google searching versus AI speed is about the same. Keeping context about past questions. Yeah. Casey posted in Discord yesterday that if you ask some AI for math questions, it'll actually give you a Python script, which will then I don't know, get run maybe and answer your question. I think that's super cool because it's not just here's the answer to your question. It's like, here's the code so that if you wanted to generate a sort of similar question yourself or an answer in the future, you could. How's it going? It's going well. This morning was a little unusual in that we had fnkymnky on the stream for about an hour and a half, hour, 40 minutes. And it was really helpful. That session is going to remain on YouTube. I don't know how I'll link it elsewhere. But yeah. And sorry, my brain is all over the place right now. And then we're going to be working on Skeleseller again in the afternoon. I want to keep working on the Archer class, but I'm just not super happy with the Archer class right now. And what type of math question? I'm not sure. It was on Discord. I can pull this up. This. Can you generate me a list of 100 items that for the format of 0.0.7 random digits? I guess this wasn't exactly math, but yeah. Yeah, there's no Archer command. I also don't have the game design doc public, but here's what the Archer was supposed to. Oh, where'd that go? Man, closing the outline makes it scroll. So, oh man, even doing that makes it scroll. Okay, here was the Archer class. So their passive was basically like keep increasing haste every time you get hit, or every time you hit, and when you get hit, reset that bonus. Then they have something that can split the arrows in two, and they have something that can either increase your haste again or pierce armor. And it's okay. I think we need to just make some changes, but we'll do that in the afternoon. I don't know about the US, but I have my own top. Oh, LTD. Basically, if it can even remotely be deducted or claimed as a write-off, it's a write-off. Don't have the complication of states. Companies in heavy debt. Yeah, I think that I don't know how taxes are elsewhere. Like if you could rate, they have these indices for like what's the happiest country, for example. Well, my question is, what's the country with the hardest tax codes to understand? And I feel like the US has to be in the top 3. Only just based on the sort of lobbying done to keep tax software as the only real route for solving your issues. I actually wonder, what if I just paste this in? Tax complexity index, really? Wow, I didn't think that was a thing. Okay, I can't see anything. Turn this off. China and the US. Wow, I was right. Top 3. Oh wait, rank out of 64, 43. Why do they show up at the bottom here then? Tax code complexity. What are the top 64? What? How do you see where number 1 is? I have no idea what I'm doing on this website right now. There's got to be a way. Oh, there we go. Peru. Okay. Well, this is not what I would have thought. I refuse to believe this, and I think the US is in the top 3. I think it makes sense since people would use this site along with happiness index on making decisions where to immigrate to. I think the happiness index is kind of the only thing that should matter, right? Theoretically. Just give an estimate of what I'll earn at the start of the year and taxes are automatically paid. Well, isn't that easy? Can you link the site? Yeah, sure. Is the top 3 simpler or more convoluted? I think more convoluted. Yeah, because its overall tax complexity is going up. What's the easiest one? Uruguay, Estonia, Switzerland. Switzerland. All right, well, again, we're refuting all of that, so it doesn't matter. I'm going to get going because I think it's a good idea to get lunch now and then resume later. I've been streaming for about 3 hours anyway. I didn't take any breaks in the last couple hours. So I hope you've all been enjoying. I'll be back in about an hour, and then we're gonna just keep working on Skeleseller. Oh, by the way, for those who didn't hear the quick news, so Ski Dog is now working on the team. He's gonna be helping with marketing and publishing, and we signed up for skeleseller.com, which has nothing on it yet. And there was one other thing. Oh yeah, launch of the next checkpoint, so version 0.3 now has a date, which is Friday, September 27th. Which gives us 2.5 weeks. So not a lot of time to do quite a lot of stuff. I hope you'll return in the afternoon and see some of that stuff. Hope you have a good rest of your day if I don't see you then. Take care.